Chapter 1288. To Ji Tianxing, Lu Feiyu was the biggest threat. The other dozen or so powerhouses were weaker, but he still had to be careful and not be careless. He used his golden wings to protect his body, and condensed a golden mana shield to protect himself. The attacks of the elders and deacons landed on him one after another, but they were all blocked by the golden wings and the mana shield. But Lu Feiyu's attack could not be ignored. He had to block it with all his strength. Flying rainbow sword feather blade. Lu Feiyu waved his golden sword and slashed out 360 golden sword light blades. They covered Ji Tianxing like feathers falling from the sky. Ji Tianxing hurriedly waved his broken sword and slashed out 36 scorching white sword light, sealing off all directions. Bam bam bam! The sword light clashed violently in the night sky, exploding with muffled sounds and splashing light fragments everywhere. Lu Feiyu's attack was neutralized, but Ji Tianxing was knocked back 100 meters. Taking advantage of this opportunity, an elder lurked behind him and suddenly attacked. That elder held two swords and used all his strength to stab at Ji Tianxing's back. Cold light flashed on the blades, releasing an indestructible aura. Ji Tianxing sensed that something was wrong. He turned around and saw that the two swords were already in front of him, about to pierce through his mana shield. At this critical moment, he did not have time to counterattack. He opened the third eye on his forehead and released violent lightning. Kaboom! Following an earth-shattering boom, a blue lightning beam as thick as a water bucket struck that elder. That elder was caught off guard and was immediately enveloped by the lightning. His physical body was turned into charcoal, and he screamed in pain as he flew backward. As he flew backward, his charred body turned into countless pieces in dust, drifting in the night sky. His soul also fell into a state of dizziness, paralyzed by the lightning and unable to move. Ji Tianxing waved his broken sword and slashed out a cold light. It cut the white light of divine soul into pieces and killed the elder on the spot. When the experts saw this, they were filled with shock. Their eyes were filled with fear as they retreated. Lu Feiyu was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He shouted angrily and slashed with his sword. Thunderous sword! The speed of his sword was extremely fast, like an aurora piercing through the sky. Its power was also as strong as lightning, capable of destroying heaven and earth. Boom! In an instant, Ji Tianxing was struck by Lei Ting's sword, and he was sent tumbling away. His magic power shield was shattered on the spot, turning into fragments of golden light that scattered everywhere. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the elders and deacons immediately cast spells to besiege him, showering him with sword shadows and saber lights. Pung pung pung! Ji Tianxing was submerged in the light of the spells. He suffered the bombardment of all kinds of secret spells, and a series of muffled sounds rang out as his body trembled. When the elders and deacons saw this scene, their spirits were lifted, and their faces were filled with anticipation and excitement. That's great! He's finally injured. Everyone, let's attack together. We can't give him a chance to breathe. Take advantage of his illness and kill him. We must cut him into pieces to dispel the hatred in our hearts. However, when everyone was excited and wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to attack fiercely, a scene that stunned them appeared. In the light of the spells that filled the sky, Ji Tianxing stepped out and rushed back safe and sound. He was surrounded by all kinds of saber lights, sword shadows, flames, hurricanes, and other spells. When these spells collided with his body, they were all shaken away by him, not leaving a single trace behind. He didn't have the protection of a magic power shield, but he relied on his physical body to ignore everyone's attack. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would never have believed that it was true. Ji Tianxing's physical defense was so strong that he could resist everyone's spells head-on without being injured at all. Oh my God, what kind of monster is this guy? His physical body is so strong? It's comparable to a soul-level upper-grade magic treasure? He's too monstrous. If we don't get rid of him, he'll definitely be a great threat to our sect. The elders and deacons all revealed shocked expressions and retreated one after another. They attacked with all their might, but they couldn't even hurt Ji Tianxing. This was a devastating blow to their confidence. Ji Tianxing flew all the way, controlling the 5 soul-slaying swords and using the soul-slaying swords. He attacked everyone fiercely. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 5 soul-slaying swords lit up with a dazzling white light and transformed into thousands of white sword shadows, enveloping more than a dozen powerhouses and launching a fierce stabbing and strangling. With the continuous bang, bang, bang of muffled sounds, more than a dozen powerhouses were killed and scattered, fleeing in all directions in a sorry state. 5 colored lights burst out from the crowd. Blood splashed everywhere, and broken limbs flew out one after another. Screams of terror, howls of pain, and shouts of anger mixed together and spread out continuously. The enraged Ji Tianxing was like a prehistoric beast, charging into the crowd and starting a massacre, killing all the elders and deacons until they were thrown off their feet. His strength was unstoppable. Lu Feiyu was also inexplicably shocked. Seeing such a shocking scene, his heartbeat accelerated several times. His angry face was distorted, and his eyes were stained with dark red blood. He rushed toward Ji Tianxing with murderous intent, holding the golden sword with both hands and slashing down fiercely. Flying Dragon Slash! Damned beast, go to hell! A giant sword that was hundreds of feet long, like a dazzling golden dragon, with the power to destroy everything, suddenly slashed toward Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was in the midst of killing in the crowd when he suddenly felt a terrible pressure coming. His face suddenly changed, and he turned to look at the sky. There was no doubt that this was the sword that Lu Feiyu had used all his strength, and it was extremely powerful. Even with his physical defenses, it was quite impossible for him to block the attack unscathed. At this critical moment, he did not hesitate to use his trump card and attack Lu Feiyu head-on. Sky-splitting sword. He held the broken sword with both hands, held his breath, and burst out with 100% of his strength, fiercely slashing out a giant golden sword that was hundreds of feet long. This was the sword that he condensed his essence, chi, and spirit, and it was also the strongest sword of oneness of heaven and man and sword. The 2 giant sword lights collided in an instant, and there was a loud boom. The deafening loud sound and the violent impact spread out in all directions, and instantly covered a radius of hundreds of miles. Those elders and deacons who had suffered heavy casualties were thrown out on the spot, and they fell on the ruins and the ground with blood all over their bodies. The 2 sword lights collapsed at the same time, exploding into light fragments that filled the sky, and the ground and the mountains below were full of holes and pits. Ji Tianxing and Lu Feiyu were sent flying at the same time, and their faces were pale as they gasped for breath. In this competition of skills, neither of them had the upper hand. Ji Tianxing was not surprised. Instead, he was a little gratified and secretly happy. I didn't think that with my strength of the 5th-level soul refinement realm, I would be able to tie with Lu Feiyu, who is at the 9th-level soul refinement realm. Chapter 1289. Lu Feiyu glared at Ji Tianxing with eyes that were about to pop out of their sockets. Flames of fury surged all over his body. Half of the dozen elders and deacons had been killed by Ji Tianxing. The remaining 6 powerhouses were also covered in blood and were severely injured. They had long been scared out of their wit. Even if they stayed to fight, it would be useless. They could not hurt Ji Tianxing at all. When he thought of this, Lu Feiyu unleashed 9 blazing white spiritual Dharma eyes and sent them flying in all directions. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the 9 spiritual Dharma eyes landed in the surrounding night sky and lit up with white light that soared into the sky. A huge white sky curtain appeared and covered an area of 60 miles, trapping him and Ji Tianxing within. This was Lu Feiyu's spiritual domain. As for the injured elders and deacons, they had already fled the battlefield and rushed to the sect 800 miles away to report the news. Within the spiritual domain, Lu Feiyu stepped into the night sky and stared at Ji Tianqing expressionlessly. His eyes were dark red, as if he was possessed. His robe was ragged and his hair was disheveled. There was still a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked somewhat pathetic. However, his injuries were not serious, and his combat power was still intact. A terrifying power was still brewing in his body. Within the domain of a few dozen miles, only he and Ji Tianqing were left. He stared at Ji Tianqing and said in a cold and indifferent tone, "Ji Tianqing, I have to admit that you are the youngest and most monstrous genius I have ever seen. With your talent and strength, you can certainly look down on the entire Tianxian continent. You may even become a primordial soul supreme soon." Ji Tianqing also stopped attacking temporarily. He stood still in the night sky 1,000 feet away from him and confronted him with his sword. After hearing Lu Feiyu's words, his lips curled into a playful smile. He said, "I will definitely become a primordial soul supreme. You don't have to judge me. On the other hand, you, the sword monarch of East Sea, do not live up to your name. How disappointing! In terms of attainments in the sword Dao, you're even inferior to me." Ji Tianqing's words were like a sharp knife that pierced Lu Feiyu's heart, making him feel extremely humiliated and angry. However, to Ji Tianqing's surprise, Lu Feiyu did not retaliate in anger. He actually swallowed his anger and said in a deep voice with an expressionless face, "Ji Tianqing, now that things have come to this, it won't be good for either of us if we continue to fight. Our sect has been passed down for more than 2,000 years. Naturally, it is not as simple as it looks. We have trump cards and killer moves that you would not expect. You are known as the #1 genius of the continent. It would be a pity if you were to die here." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and looked at him playfully. He asked, "Lu Feiyu, what do you mean? Could it be that you want to make peace?" "No, I'm not asking for peace." Lu Feiyu shook his head and said in a dignified and low voice, "We are discussing a solution that is beneficial to everyone." Interesting." Ji Tianqing smiled and said playfully, "Then tell me, how can it be beneficial to everyone?" Lu Feiyu said proudly, "You have no enmity with our sect. It's all because of Murongjing. However, from today onwards, our sect will not interfere in the grudge between you and Murongjing. I can let you live and let you leave our sect alive. However, you must leave the Black Dragon behind as compensation for the lives of our sect's protectors, elders and deacons." Ji Tianqing laughed and said in a playful tone, "Murongjing is your disciple. Those protectors, elders and deacons are your subordinate. You can ignore their lives, but you only want to exchange for the Black Dragon. You are indeed a sect leader. You only think about the big picture." Even a fool could hear the sarcasm in his words. Lu Feiyu's expression did not change, as if he did not understand. He said calmly, "Ji Tianqing, you should know that I am not the strongest person in our sect. No matter how strong you are, you can only fight to a draw with me. If I am determined to kill you, you will not be able to leave this place alive. Your life or that Black Dragon. Choose one of the two. You decide." Ji Tianqing sneered contemptuously, "Robbers are indeed robbers. You can still speak so eloquently as if you are giving alms to others. Lu Feiyu, your shamelessness is truly admirable." Hearing this, Lu Feiyu frowned and stared at him coldly. He asked, "So, you don't agree?" "Of course." Ji Tianqing said without hesitation, "The Black Dragon is my pet. Why should I give it to you? As for the death of those protectors, elders and deacons, they only have themselves to blame. You are the same. If you know what is good for you and get out of the way, you can still save your little life. If you dare to stop me, I will make sure you die here and your soul scatter." Ji Tianqing's tone was cold and his attitude was very tough. His whole body exuded an incomparable domineering aura. Lu Feiyu's face was livid with anger. His eyes were surging with cold, murderous intent. He shouted in a deep voice, "Ji Tianxing, since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, don't blame me for being impolite. I will cut you into 8 pieces, extract your divine soul, and refine it into a puppet. Together with your black dragon, you will be my sex watchdog." When his voice fell, he made a gesture with both hands and performed a secret technique. He controlled the divine soul realm and launched a fierce attack on Ji Tianxing. Life-stealing soul-breaking sword formation. Following his angry shout, 3,600 rays of dark golden sword light appeared in the blazing white light curtain within a radius of 60 miles. Each ray of sword light was 30 feet long. More than 3,000 rays of sword light flew from all directions, carrying a vast amount of divine soul power. They pierced towards Ji Tianxing like a rain of arrows. Swoosh! Swoosh! In a split second, the night sky was covered by the golden sword light. Ji Tianxing's figure was also drowned in it. Lu Feiyu stood high in the sky and used all his strength to control the sword formation to strangle Ji Tianxing. He even shouted with a ferocious face, "Damn little bastard, do you really think I will let you go? Even if you hand over the black dragon, I will still turn you into ashes. Our sect has been dominating the East Sea for 3,000 years. Other than the imperial courts, we have never been afraid of any powerhouses. You dare to break into our sect and start a massacre. Even if I kill you 10 times, it will not be enough to vent my hatred." In the midst of the 3,600 golden swords, Ji Tianxing was folding his wings to protect himself. No matter how hard those golden swords tried to pierce his wings, they could not do any harm to him, even though loud bangs could be heard when they landed on his wings. However, the power of the 3,000 golden swords was endless. As long as the divine soul realm was not broken, the golden swords would always exist. He was besieged by the golden swords in the sky for about 100 breaths. He stopped defending and started to use his secret technique to launch a counterattack. God-slaying spear. He suddenly raised his left palm, and the golden mark on the back of his hand released a terrifying mysterious flame that gushed out from the center of his palm. Swoosh. Chapter 1290. Lu Feiyu didn't think that Ji Tianxing would still have the strength to fight back when he was surrounded by the soul-severing sword array. When the god-slaying spear made of flames pierced through the thousands of sword lights and arrived before him, his expression changed and he revealed a look of shock. The power of the god-slaying spear was far beyond his imagination and filled his heart with fear. Is this really a technique that a soul-refining realm cultivator can use? At that moment, this thought flashed through his mind and a sense of fear rose from the depths of his soul. But he was worthy of being a sect leader and a 9th-layer soul-refining realm cultivator. Even in the face of death, he didn't panic. Without hesitation, he took out a golden disc and poured his spiritual energy into it. The disc expanded to 3 feet wide and blocked in front of him. This was an ancient-looking disc with ancient patterns and characters carved on it. The edges were damaged and worn. This object was clearly an antique with thousands of years of history, and it exuded an incomparably heavy aura. This was one of the treasures of the Du Tian sect, a top-quality soul artifact passed down from the ancient era, the 7 profound heavenly disc. More than 2,000 years ago, the founder of the Du Tian sect used this 7 profound heavenly disc to defeat many powerful cultivators in the East Sea. He captured many powerful demons and made a name for himself. This was a treasure that was second only to a divine artifact. It could suppress the fate of a sect and protect billions of people. In the hands of a powerhouse like Lu Feiyu, this 7 profound heavenly disc could change the layout of mountains and rivers and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It had the power to control heaven and earth and communicate with the sun, moon, and stars. But that was under normal circumstances. Lu Feiyu had to spend a lot of spiritual energy and years to set up an array to achieve this effect. At this moment, he was already at a critical moment of life and death, so he was unable to utilize any of its profound effects. He could only use the 7 profound heavenly disk to block in front of him and hope that this treasure's strong defense could stop the god-slaying spear. Boom! With a deafening explosion, the god-slaying spear hit the 7 profound heavenly disks. At that moment, golden light filled the sky and illuminated the entire soul domain. It was dazzling and bright. The unparalleled impact caused the simple and crude 7 profound heavenly plate to shatter into pieces. The deicide spear also collapsed and shattered, turning into a sky-reaching scarlet flame that surged like a giant wave, spreading out in all directions. Violent shockwaves mixed with the golden fragments of the Tian Pan spread out in all directions, hitting the soul realm with a series of whooshing sounds. Lu Feiyu's divine soul domain was immediately bombarded until it was on the verge of collapse. Cracks also appeared on the blinding white light curtain, which was making cracking noises. Lu Feiyu's spiritual domain was on the verge of shattering, and her spiritual soul was also severely injured. Her face immediately turned pale, and a stream of blood spurted out of her mouth. My 7 profound heavenly plate was actually defeated. Lu Feiyu widened her eyes in shock. She looked at the fragments in the sky in disbelief and was dumbfounded. He simply could not believe that Ji Tianxing was only at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm and could actually shatter a top-grade soul artifact, the 7 profound heavenly plate, in one move. This was simply a miracle. Lu Feiyu's confidence also collapsed along with the 7 profound heavenly plate. He even started to suspect whether this white-robed youth in front of him was an Essence Soul Supreme in disguise? If not an Essence Soul Supreme powerhouse, who could break a top-grade soul artifact in one move. At this time, Ji Tianxing had already come back to his senses. He rushed out of the golden light and flames that filled the sky. Holding the broken sword with both hands, he fiercely slashed out 9,000 feet long sword lights, hacking at the surrounding blinding white light curtain. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds exploded. The blinding white light curtain that covered the sky was on the verge of collapse, and the cracks widened further. Lu Feiyu was shocked and furious. He could only forcefully endure his injuries, suppress the shock and disbelief in his heart, and hurriedly cast a spell to stabilize his divine soul domain. The reason why he used his divine soul domain to trap Ji Tianxing and even pretended to seek peace with Ji Tianxing was to stall for time. After all, the Grand Elder had always been in closed-door cultivation and had not shown his face for decades. He had to buy enough time for the elders and deacons to knock on the Grand Elder's door and awaken him. Seeing that his divine soul domain was about to shatter, how could he not be anxious? Little B****, don't even think about escaping, Lu Feiyu roared. He did not hesitate to sacrifice 20 years of cultivation to release monstrous dermic powers into his divine soul domain. His 9 divine soul dharma eyes also spun rapidly, dazzling like small suns, quickly repairing his divine soul domain. Ji Tianxing had already seen through his intentions. Seeing that the cracks in his divine soul domain were quickly repairing, he immediately sneered with a sinister expression. Lu Feiyu, you want to trap me with just you? Wishful thinking. As he said that, he held the broken sword with both hands and used all his dermic powers to stab at the white light barrier beside him. He deeply understood the principle that it was better to attack more forcefully than to destroy one side. The broken sword released a cold light that was condensed to the extreme, instantly piercing through the sky and smashing into the barrier in the distance. Bam! With a deafening explosion, the cold light suddenly bloomed and instantly turned into a huge ball of blazing white light, as dazzling as the sun. The white light barrier was blown into a hole with a radius of thousands of feet. The dark night sky outside the domain could be clearly seen. Earth-shattering sound waves, violent and terrifying shock waves, and countless fragments of white light were wantonly splashing in the night sky. Cracks began to appear all around the hole, and they quickly began to spread. The divine soul domain could not withstand it any longer and completely collapsed. Bam! Another muffled explosion sounded. The blazing white light barrier that covered an area of 60 miles shattered into white light fragments and scattered in the night sky, quickly dissipating. Lu Feiyu's divine soul suffered a backlash. Suddenly, his body shook violently and blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. His body was as stiff as a rock. He fell straight from the night sky and smashed into the ground with a plop. The battle was temporarily over. The white light, sound waves, and hurricanes that filled the night sky howled for a long time before dissipating. 10 breaths later, when the night sky gradually became clear again, Ji Tianxing's figure appeared. He appeared in the night sky safe and sound, stepping on the void, holding the broken sword in his hand and looking down at the earth below with sharp eyes. The ground within 100 miles had long been turned into ruins, full of cracks and big pits. Lu Feiyu was in a big pit, struggling to get out of the pile of dirt. He used his qi to shake off the dust on his body and stood up shakily. His clothes were ragged, his hair was disheveled, and his face and chest were stained with blood. He looked very miserable. Seeing him like this, Ji Tianxing shouted expressionlessly in a low voice, "Sword Emperor of Donghai, a loser. You have disgraced the name of the Sword Emperor. Die." After that, he rushed down from the sky toward Lu Feiyu and slashed down with his sword. But at this moment, in the night sky 10 miles away, a bright golden light suddenly lit up, like a meteor streaking across the night sky, speeding over. Before the golden light arrived, a thunderous roar exploded above Ji Tianxing's head. Chapter 1291. The sudden roar was like thunder, shocking everyone's hearts. With Ji Tianxing as the center, everything within 1,000 feet radius was suppressed by an invisible spiritual energy, like a cage. His charging speed immediately slowed down, as if he was in a quagmire. He could only struggle with all his might. The invisible spiritual energy was so powerful that it made it difficult for him to breathe. His face was a bit pale, and he could not use his fa smoothly. Such a powerful spiritual energy, it's not any weaker than the imperial tutors. Could it be that this person is the most powerful person in the Heaven sect, the great elder known as Ancestor Sanju? Ji Tianxing turned his head to look at the night sky not far away. He stared at the golden light as this thought flashed through his mind. His expression and eyes became very serious, as if he was facing a great enemy. He guessed the identity of this person, but he did not think that this person's strength would be on par with the imperial tutors. While he was struggling to move, Lu Feiyu, who was in the deep pit, had already flown into the night sky and escaped far away. Ji Tianxing could only give up on chasing him. He held the broken sword in his hand and stared coldly at the person who came. In the next moment, the golden light pierced through the night sky and arrived before him. Whoosh! The golden light dimmed, revealing the figure of a tall and sturdy elder. He stood 1,000 feet away from Ji Tianxing. This elder wore a gray robe, and his hair was tied up in a bun with a wooden hairpin. A hemp rope was tied around his waist, and he wore a pair of black cloth shoes with white soles. At first glance, this gray-robed elder looked like an ordinary mortal. His clothes were very simple and did not look very eye-catching. However, upon closer inspection, one would find that although the elder's hair and beard were all white, his face was ruddy, and his skin was as clear as jade. His face did not look old at all. His eyes were as bright as the stars, and his pupils were as vast as the night sky. Images of the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers appeared in his eyes. The elder's aura was also otherworldly, as if he was above all living things and did not belong to this world. Ji Tianxing knew very well that the elder's strength and experience had already reached a state where his heart was as still as water. This was a true expert, the most terrifying opponent unfathomable. At the same time, he could confirm his previous guess. This old man was the Grand Elder of the Heaven Evasion sect, Old Ancestor Sanju. According to the Heaven Evasion sect's historical records, the Grand Elder had 3 absolute arts, and they were all his proudest absolute arts. The first was a sword technique unrivaled in the Eastern Sea. No one could rival it, and a single sword could break through 10,000 technique. The second was formations. He had inherited the legacy of the Heaven Evasion sect's founder. Once anyone below the primordial soul realm was trapped in his formations, no one would be able to break through. The third absolute was calligraphy. It was a masterpiece that he had studied for more than 800 years. He wanted to find the great Tao in calligraphy, communicate with the principles of the world, and find an opportunity to break through to the primordial soul realm. It was because of this that the Grand Elder's reputation as one of the 3 absolutes shook the Eastern Sea. Because he had lived for nearly 2,000 years, his seniority and reputation were extremely high, and he had the qualifications to become an ancestor of a sect. That was why he was called Ancestor 3 Absolute. It was said that even the Golden Dragon Emperor of the Imperial Court of the Water Tribe had high praise for him. Ji Tianxing and Ancestor 3 Absolutes stood in the night sky, facing each other from 1,000 feet away. Neither of them spoke first. Lu Feiyu, who was covered in wounds, saw Ancestor 3 Absolutes arrive, but it was as if he had seen his savior. He quickly flew over. He stopped beside Ancestor 3 Absolutes and quickly wiped away the blood on his face. He bowed respectfully and said, "Disciple greets martial uncle." Ancestor 3 Absolutes didn't even look at him. His eyes were still staring at Ji Tianxing. He asked in a deep voice, "Lu Feiyu, what's going on?" "I've been in seclusion for 46 years, studying the heaven scripture. I was about to find the opportunity to enter the primordial soul realm, but you sent someone to knock on my door in the middle of the night, ruining my plans." Lu Feiyu was filled with fear. He quickly explained, "Martial uncle, this person's name is Ji Tianxing. He has a grudge with Murongjing, so he disguised himself as a disciple of our sect and snuck into our sect, starting a massacre. This person destroyed our sect's forbidden grounds, floating mountain, and killed the left and right protectors, as well as many elders and deacons. I'm useless. I couldn't stop him even after using all my strength. I even had to trouble martial uncle. I'm truly ashamed." Ancestor 3 Absolutes raised his eyebrows. A hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. This person is only in his early 20s. Even if he started cultivating when he was in his mother's womb, he's only cultivated for 20 years. How can he have such strength that even you couldn't stop him, and were even injured by him? Lu Feiyu had expected him to have such a reaction. He quickly explained, "Martial uncle, don't be fooled by this person's appearance. Although he's only at the 5th level of the spirit refinement realm, his attainments in the way of the sword are slightly better than mine. He also has many powerful trump cards. It's said that this person is the #1 genius of the Tianxian continent. His talent is rarely seen since ancient times." Ancestor 3 Absolutes was even more shocked. He sized up Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze. His lips curled into a cold smile as he said in a playful tone, "I've studied a puppet sutra before. I've grasped more than 30 secret techniques to refine puppets, but I've never come across a perfect puppet material. Since this person is so monstrous, I'll kill him and use him as a material to refine a heaven-patrolling sword puppet. He'll definitely become a loyal guard of our sect." After saying that, Ancestor 3 Absolutes revealed a cold smile. His eyes were filled with anticipation. Lu Feiyu nodded in agreement and added, "Martial uncle, this person also has a black dragon. I've already seen it. It's not an ordinary dragon. It seems to be a legendary divine dragon." "What? A divine black dragon?" Ancestor 3 Absolute's eyes widened. His eyes were filled with shock. He found it unbelievable. In the past 10,000 years, there hasn't been a divine dragon in this world. How can he have a black dragon? No wonder he's the #1 genius of the continent. To have such a great opportunity, he's the envy of others. However, since you dared to barge into our sect, you're courting death. Your opportunity belongs to our sect." As he spoke, Ancestor 3 Absolute's body emitted a murderous aura. A hurricane started to blow in the night sky. "Lu Feiyu, back off a little and help me maintain the formation. Watch how I kill this kid." Ancestor 3 Absolutes waved his sleeves. Golden light surged out of his body and 9 divine spirit Dharma eyes appeared. The strange thing was that the 9 divine spirit Dharma eyes were half white and half gold. They emitted a dazzling golden light. The 9 divine spirit Dharma eyes gathered together to form a ring, revealing a hazy image. Although the image was still very blurry, one could roughly tell that it was a giant python or a dark golden dragon. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's expression changed again. He revealed an extremely serious expression. He's indeed a half-step essence soul realm expert. He's only a step away from stepping into the essence soul realm and condensing a essence soul dharma idol. From that hazy image, once this old fellow breaks through to the essence soul realm, the essence soul dharma idol that he condenses will definitely be related to dragons and snake. Chapter 1292. The 3 dazzling golden sword lights were all 30 meters long and contained a supreme power that could destroy the world. Swish, swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, the 3 sword lights pierced through the night sky and arrived in front of Ji Tianxing. Each sword light locked onto his soul aura. Even if he flew into the sky or went into the ground, he would not be able to dodge. He could only choose to block or dissolve them. At that moment, he was pincered by the 3 sword lights. His nerves were tense and he felt a chill from the depths of his soul. It was as if he saw death approaching. At the moment of life and death, he only had time to swing his broken sword and slash out a 300-meter-long sword light with all his strength. Bang! Amidst the deafening noise, the huge blazing white sword light blocked the 2 golden swords and exploded with an earth-shattering bang. The night sky was illuminated by the golden and white light. It was as brilliant as day. The huge white sword and the 2 golden swords collapsed at the same time, exploding into fragments that scattered in all directions. However, there was still one golden sword light that could not be blocked. It stabbed Ji Tianxing with a bang. Ji Tianxing was sent flying away on the spot, tumbling 10 miles away. However, the robe he was wearing was shattered into pieces and scattered into the night sky. However, he was completely unscathed. There were no wounds or bloodstains. There was only a fist-sized dent on his chest that had turned red. This kind of injury was nothing to him. It was negligible. When he flew 10 miles away and fell from the sky, he finally got rid of the terrifying impact and steadied himself. He returned to the night sky and stared at Forefather Sanju from 10 miles away. He did not speak, but he was shocked and gratified. He thought to himself, "The galaxy body refinement art is indeed amazing. My body has been refined to the limit of the soul refinement realm by the divine fire of sun and moon. My defense is actually so strong. If it was Lu Feiyu who took this attack, there would definitely be a bloody hole in her chest." 10 miles away, Lu Feiyu and Forefather Sanju were dumbfounded. Both of them widened their eyes in shock and disbelief. Lu Feiyu was filled with anticipation. He thought that the Patriarch would definitely be able to kill Ji Tianxing in one strike. However, he was simply unable to accept this result. It was simply too surreal. This is impossible. That brat had clearly been struck by the sword, so how could he not die? Was he a human or a demon? Why was his physical defense so strong? Could it be that he has a divine artifact protecting him? Lu Feiyu could not figure it out, so she assumed that Ji Tianxing had a divine artifact protecting him. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to be safe and sound. Old Ancestor Sanju's eyesight was far sharper than Lu Feiyu's. He sized up Ji Tianqing with a few glances and saw through the clues. This kid's skin, flesh, blood, and bones are all glowing gold and silver like the radiance of the sun and moon. Could it be that his body has been tempered by the flames of the sun and moon? This was impossible. Only primordial soul supremes can withstand the fire of sun and moon. Martial artists below the primordial soul realm will definitely be burned to ashes by the fire of sun and moon, their souls dispersing. Pausing for a moment, Ancestor Sanju calmed down, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Humph, as expected of the number one genius of the continent, a rare demon in the world. Not only is his talent extremely strong, even his physical body has been tempered to perfection. This is just what I want. After refining him into a puppet, he will be invincible. As he spoke, he activated his 9 godly soul Dharma eyes, releasing a dazzling golden light that condensed into a golden dragon that charged towards Ji Tianqing. This kid's physical defense is strong, but I don't believe that his godly soul is also so strong. There was no doubt that the golden dragon condensed from godly soul energy was an ultimate move that specialized in killing godly souls. Old Ancestor Sanju was very confident that as long as Ji Tianqing was hit by the golden dragon, his godly soul would definitely shatter and shatter on the spot. At that time, Ji Tianqing would be completely dead, but his perfect body would be preserved, which would be perfect for him to refine into a puppet. Swish! The golden dragon carried a blazing golden flame and instantly pierced through the night sky, charging towards Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing's expression changed immediately, as if he was facing a great enemy. Of course, he knew that the golden dragon was going to destroy his godly soul. However, his godly soul had not been tempered, so it was only equivalent to LV8 of the soul refining realm, which was one of his weaknesses. Once he was hit by the golden dragon, his godly soul would definitely shatter and he would die on the spot. At the critical moment, he immediately thought of the heaven-patching orb. Subconsciously, he activated the heaven-patching orb and released a vast white light to protect his godly soul golden sword. Boom! In the next moment, the golden dragon arrived and fiercely hit Ji Tianqing, causing an earth-shattering explosion. He was immediately blasted away, flying 10 miles in the night sky and smashing into the ruins of the ground. A deep pit with a radius of 100 meters was created on the ground. The violent impact spread out, spreading the surrounding area of the deep pit and causing dust to fly everywhere. However, after a short breath, Ji Tianqing flew out of the deep pit. He was still unscathed, and his eyes were clear and bright. There was no dizziness or blurred state at all. Obviously, the golden dragon did not cause any damage to his godly soul. It did not even shake it. When Ji Tianqing flew up into the night sky again, Ancestor Sanju and Lu Feiyu were completely dumbfounded and dumbfounded. Both of them were peerless powerhouses, but they looked as if they had seen a ghost. They were extremely shocked and their eyeballs were about to pop out. Oh my God! Could it be that this guy couldn't be killed? How can he not die? Does he have an immortal body? Lu Feiyu roared in a hoarse voice, completely losing the demeanor of a sect leader. Ancestor Sanju was also shocked and angry. He clenched his fists tightly and his face was ashen. Damn bastard! Even his godly soul has been tempered to the extreme? That's impossible. He must have some kind of divine artifact to protect his godly soul from harm. Ancestor Sanju did not want to believe in miracles. He only believed in his own judgment and speculation. He firmly believed that there was a reason for any unbelievable miracle. After Ji Tianqing flew up into the night sky, he turned around and flew away without hesitation, escaping towards the exit hundreds of miles away. He had already seen Ancestor Sanju's terrifying strength, so of course he would not continue to tremble. If he did not escape now, he would not be able to escape tonight even if he had wings. He would definitely die here. Although Ancestor Sanju was the same as Lu Feiyu, an expert at the 9th level of the soul refinement realm, there was a difference of thousands of years between them. However, there was a difference of over 1,000 years between the two of them. One of them had just stepped into the 9th level of the soul tempering realm, while the other was a half step into the primordial soul realm. Ji Tianxing used all his strength and all his trump cards, but could only fight to a draw with Lu Feiyu. It was difficult for him to win. Now, Ancestor Sanju was personally attacking. The power of each move was destructive and was several times stronger than Lu Feiyu's. Ji Tianxing could rely on his invincible physical defense and the protection of the heaven-mending pearl to block Ancestor Sanju's killing moves twice in a row. However, he was very clear that Ancestor Sanju definitely had many trump cards that he had not used yet. Chapter 1293. I'm only at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm after all. Being able to fight Lu Feiyu to a standstill is already shocking enough. Unfortunately, I'm still too young to face an old monster like Forefather Sanju who has lived for 2,000 years. Ji Tianxing sighed as he sped through the night towards the exit of the Heaven Ascension sect. Sometimes, running away was not shameful. Especially when he had barged into the Heaven Ascension sect alone. Not only had he saved the little black dragon, but he had also killed the left protector, third elder, and Ji Wutsua who had kidnapped the little black dragon, as well as many elders and deacons. He had even taught the arrogant sect master Lu Feiyu a lesson and stepped on the sword monarch of the East Sea. This was already a feat that shocked the world and was unimaginable to billions of cultivators. Against an old monster like Forefather Sanju, who was half a step into the primordial soul realm, it was only natural that he could not defeat him. Run with all his might. As long as he could safely escape from the Heaven Ascension sect, he would have profited greatly. After I cultivate for 2 more years, if I can reach the 8th or 9th level of the soul refinement realm, I'll be able to crush Forefather Sanju when I meet him again. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself as he made up his mind. He stepped on a blazing white soul spell sword and shot through the night sky like a streak of light, rushing towards the exit 800 miles away. 20 miles behind him, Forefather Sanju and Lu Feiyu were furiously chasing after him with all their might. In the night sky ahead of him, there were still specks of light and the true essence of many cultivators. When he was fighting with Lu Feiyu, the people of the Heaven Ascension sect had been alerted. When he was fighting with Forefather Sanju, over 100 Heaven Origin Realm experts flew through the sky and rushed towards the battlefield. At this moment, the Sky Origin stage cultivators saw a white light flashing across the night sky. They were running away as fast as lightning. They all started to shout and shout. "Stop him! Don't let him escape! The enemy has already been heavily injured by the Grand Elder. We must stop him. As long as we can delay him for a while, the sect master and Grand Elder will come and kill him. This person destroyed our sect's forbidden grounds and killed many elders and deacons. He is unforgivable and must die." Shouts broke the silence of the night sky. Countless cultivators were filled with righteous indignation, their voices filled with passion and passion. Perhaps it was the presence of Lu Feiyu and old ancestor Sanju that made them feel more courageous and valiant. They even forgot the difference in strength between them and Ji Tianxing. Therefore, they all brandished the swords in their hands and activated their magical artifacts with all their might, releasing a sky full of sword and saber radiance, which rained down on Ji Tianxing like a storm. Ji Tianxing turned a deaf ear to him and simply ignored him. Swish! He was like a shooting star, instantly passing through the sky full of attacks and flying far away without any injuries. Those Sky Origin stage cultivators couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. Moreover, even if some of the saber light and sword shadows hit him, they would not be able to break through his physical defense. Not even a single strand of hair would be lost. Of course, there were also a few ignorant white-robed disciples who stood in front of Ji Tianxing without any regard for their own safety. Ji Tianxing did not hesitate at all, nor did he show any mercy. He charged straight into them. Bang, bang, bang. With a series of muffled sounds, the dazzling white sword light pierced through the bodies of the white-robed disciples like a stick of candied hawthorn. Their bodies instantly exploded, turning into a pile of minced meat and a rain of blood that fell into the night sky. Unknowingly, 100 seconds passed. Ji Tianxing finally flew over 800 miles. He crossed the mountain range of the heaven-vanishing sect and rushed to the exit. At the end of the vast and flat grassland stood a huge array. There were 9 tall stone pillars around the array, all of which gave off a dense white light. As long as he activated the array and stepped through the portal of light, he would be able to leave the heaven-vanishing sect and return to the eastern sea's returning ruins. Ji Tianxing focused and rushed to the side of the array. He was about to cast a spell to activate the array. However, just as he cast 5 pillars of light and completed the first step of activating the array, Ancestor Sanju arrived first. He also stood on a huge golden sword and flew into the sky above the grassland like a streak of light. However, the golden sword beneath his feet was condensed from vast amounts of magic power. It was different from Ji Tianxing's soul spell sword and could not be compared. He looked down at Ji Tianxing from above and growled with a dark expression, "Kid, I really can't believe that your flying speed is even faster than mine. However, you will definitely die tonight. I definitely won't let you escape alive. Don't even think about running away. Die." With that, Ancestor Sanju waved his hand and sent 4 golden swords towards Ji Tianxing. Swish, swish, swish. The 4 30-meter-long golden swords formed a sword array and exploded with devastating power as they descended from Ji Tianxing's head. Sword array of the 4 symbols. Kill. The sword array enveloped an area of 300 meters. Not only did it want to kill Ji Tianxing, it even enveloped the teleportation array. Ancestor Sanju's goal was very clear. In order to kill Ji Tianxing, he would not hesitate to destroy the teleportation array. He was a formation grandmaster anyway, so it would be easy for him to rebuild and repair the teleportation array. However, Ji Tianxing could not allow the array to be destroyed. He immediately flew into the sky and took the initiative to meet the 4 swords. The 4 swords immediately changed directions and shot towards him. Just as the swords were about to hit him, he suddenly closed his golden wings. Wings of the golden rock. Bang, 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 bang. With a deafening explosion, he was struck by the 4 swords and fell from the sky onto the grassland. 100-meter deep pit was formed on the ground. Mud flew everywhere and the entire grassland shook violently. The 4 giant swords also collapsed, exploding into a sky full of golden light fragments, bursting out in all directions. Ancestor Sanju frowned and looked towards the bottom of the pit to check on Ji Tianxing's situation. At this moment, Ji Tianxing took the opportunity to fly out of the pit and charge towards Ancestor Sanju. He raised his left hand and released an ultimate skill. God-killing spear. He had already used the God-killing spear 15 minutes ago and used up 30% of his divine flames. Now, in order to escape, he no longer had any scruples. He released 50% of his divine flames and formed a flaming spear, stabbing it towards Ancestor Sanju. When the God-killing spear flew out, the divine flame mark on the back of his hand immediately dimmed and became blurry and transparent. Without a doubt, the divine flame mark's power was almost used up and could not be used again in a short period of time. The God-killing spear that had been condensed with 50% of his divine power was also extremely powerful. It was his final trump card. Boom! Ancestor Sanju did not have time to dodge and was hit by the God-killing spear. Amidst a deafening boom, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was sent flying backwards. A bloody hole was blasted open in his abdomen, causing blood to spurt out. Chapter 1294. Ji Tianxing used the god-slaying spear to send old ancestor San Ju flying. However, he did not chase after him. Instead, he immediately turned around and continued to break the teleportation formation. He knew that although the god-slaying spear was powerful, it could not cause fatal damage to old ancestor San Ju. For an expert at old ancestor San Ju's level, even if his arms and legs were cut off, it would not affect him much, let alone a bloody hole in his stomach. This kind of injury was only a little troublesome for old ancestor San Ju. It could only delay him for a while. Ji Tianxing used every second to cast a spell and quickly activated the teleportation formation. The 9 jade dragon pillars around the formation lit up one by one, giving off a dense glow. At this moment, Lu Feiyu arrived near the formation. Before he could see Ji Tianxing's movements, he saw old ancestor San Ju being sent flying. He fell from the sky, covered in blood, and landed on the ground. Lu Feiyu was stunned on the spot. She widened her eyes in horror and let out a worried cry. "Grand Elder!" As he called out, he anxiously flew to the ground and helped the bloodied old ancestor San Ju up. "Grand Elder, how are you? Are your injuries serious?" Lu Feiyu was extremely worried. He was very worried about one thing. If old ancestor San Ju was heavily injured by Ji Tianxing and couldn't fight anymore, then Ji Tianxing would go on a killing spree within the sect. No one would be able to stop him if he wantonly slaughtered the disciples of the sect. That would be a disaster and humiliation for the Heaven Evasion sect. Old ancestor San Ju's face was ghastly pale. Blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were slightly dazed. The god-slaying spear was too powerful. It did not only cause him a bloody hole in his stomach, but also shook his soul. He climbed out of the hole with Lu Feiyu's help. He circulated his cultivation to shake off the dust on his body. Only then did he gradually regain his senses. "Feiyu, that brat wants to escape. Go stop him. We can't let him escape." Old ancestor San Ju circulated his cultivation to suppress his injuries and heal the bloody hole in his waist as he anxiously ordered Lu Feiyu. Lu Feiyu was stunned. Instinctively, she wanted to defend herself. He had already fought with Ji Tianxing. Not only did he not gain the upper hand, but he was also injured by Ji Tianxing. His face was covered in dust, and he looked particularly miserable. Even old ancestor San Ju was heavily injured and fell to the ground covered in blood. How could he be a match for Ji Tianxing? However, Lu Feiyu subconsciously looked at the teleportation portal and glanced at Ji Tianxing. When he saw that Ji Tianxing had already activated half of the teleportation array and that 7 of the 9 jade pillars had already lit up, he was immediately filled with anger. "Bastard! You're still thinking of running away? In your dreams!" Lu Feiyu shouted angrily. He no longer cared about the danger and rushed to the teleportation formation. He waved his sword and slashed out a dozen sword lights toward Ji Tianxing. He didn't hope to injure Ji Tianxing. He only hoped that he could stall Ji Tianxing so that he couldn't escape. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 16 blazing soul swords with unparalleled power descended from the sky toward Ji Tianxing. They instantly drowned out his figure. Ji Tianxing was busy activating the teleportation portal and completely ignored Lu Feiyu's attack. When the sword lights slashed toward him, he continued to activate the teleportation portal without looking back. He only spread the golden wings on his back to protect himself. Bang bang bang! The sword lights slashed the golden wings one after another, creating a series of muffled sounds. The sword lights all collapsed and shattered, turning into countless fragments of white light that scattered in all directions. Ji Tianxing's body was also shaken by the impact. His feet sank deep into the ground. However, he didn't care about his own safety and hurriedly activated the teleportation portal. A moment later, the 9th stone pillar around the portal finally lit up. Instantly, the 9 stone pillars lit up with a dazzling white light that shot into the center of the portal, forming a door of light that was more than 3 meters tall. The array was fully activated, and the teleportation door finally appeared. Ji Tianxing jumped without hesitation and turned into a streak of white light that flew toward the portal. "Don't even think about escaping, you scoundrel!" Lu Feiyu yelled at the top of his lungs. He immediately raised his broad golden sword and was about to use his ultimate sword technique to kill Ji Tianxing. However, he knew that he didn't have enough time. By the time the sword lights he released reached the portal, Ji Tianxing would have already stepped through the portal and escaped from the Heaven Ascension sect. At this moment, Forefather 3 Extremes had already suppressed his injuries and temporarily healed the bloody hole in his abdomen. His figure flashed past Lu Feiyu and pounced toward the teleportation door as fast as lightning. Whoosh! In the next instant, the portal flashed with white light and Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared. Forefather 3 Extremes followed closely behind. After passing through the portal, his figure also disappeared. Lu Feiyu was stunned for a moment and turned to look at the night sky behind him. Not far away in the night sky, several elders and deacons were rushing over to help without any regard for their own safety. Seeing this, Lu Feiyu shouted to everyone, "Elders, stay behind and guard the sect. Don't let anyone sneak into the sect and cause trouble. I will join forces with the Grand Elder and chase after that brat. We will tear him to pieces and burn his bones to ashes." After giving these instructions, Lu Feiyu turned around and flew into the teleportation gate, chasing after Yi Chen. Whoosh! Inside the Heaven Ascension sect, the Big Dipper star formation flashed with white light and a figure appeared out of thin air. The first person to charge out of the portal was naturally Ji Tianxing. He wore a white robe and held a pitch-black broken sword in his hand. After flying out of the portal, he flew into the distance like a streak of light. The 9 white-robed guards guarding the portal were not prepared for someone to suddenly charge out. When they discovered that someone had charged out and were about to give chase, Ji Tianxing had already flown into the sky and was flying into the distance at an unbelievable speed. In just 2 short breaths, he had left the mountain where the Heaven Ascension sect's entrance was and entered the vast sea of clouds. Then, another figure in a gray robe rushed out of the teleportation array. The guards around the formation did not recognize Old Ancestor 3 Absolute. After all, Forefather 3 Extremes had been in seclusion for more than 40 years and had not shown his face. However, these guards could vaguely guess his identity from his appearance and aura. The white-robed guards were stunned for a moment and immediately knelt down to greet him with an extremely respectful attitude. Forefather 3 Extremes did not even look at them. His figure flashed and flew into the sky, chasing after Ji Tianxing. When the guards saw Forefather 3 Extremes' figure disappear into the sea of clouds, they all let out a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. After all, Old Ancestor Sanju was furious, and his entire body was emitting a powerful spiritual pressure that made their hearts tremble, and they couldn't even breathe. However, just as the white-robed guards stood up, a third figure rushed out of the teleportation formation. Whoosh! Although this person's clothes were tattered and his body was covered in blood, he looked rather wretched. However, the guards all recognized that this was Sect Master Lu Feiyu. Chapter 1295. The guards all stared at Lu Feiyu, dumbfounded. They had no idea what had happened. They couldn't imagine how their sect leader, who had always been high above everyone else, had turned into such a bear. Just as they were stunned, Lu Feiyu's sharp gaze swept over. He ordered coldly, "Close the teleportation formation immediately. Do not allow anyone to enter the sect." With that, he also leapt into the sky, turning into a streak of light and disappearing. The guards stared at his departing figure, unable to recover for a long time. It was currently afternoon. The sun shone brilliantly high in the sky, and a gentle breeze blew across the sea. Ji Tianxing sped through the sky, flying towards the east as fast as lightning. The further he flew, the deeper he would be into the eastern sea's ruins of End. The further he would be from the profound sky continent, and the more dangerous the situation would be. Ji Tianqing obviously knew this, but he had no choice but to fly with all his might. He did not dare to stop at all. He had no choice. Forefather Sanju and Lu Feiyu were just a few dozen kilometers behind him, pursuing him relentlessly. If he turned around and flew back, he would run into Forefather Sanju. It would be equivalent to walking right into a trap. 4 hours later, Ji Tianqing's soul sword had used up too much of his soul power. Its light had become dimmer and dimmer. His flying speed had greatly decreased, and he was rather tired as well. Very soon, Forefather Sanju caught up. When they were still 5 kilometers away, Forefather Sanju waved his hands. His sleeves fluttered as he cast a secret technique. He unleashed a wave of golden light that blotted out the sky. Heaven-capturing palm. The dazzling golden light immediately condensed into a huge palm 100 meters wide. It descended from the sky and grabbed at Ji Tianqing. Within the range of the golden palm, a terrifying suppressive force enveloped Ji Tianqing. As if he had fallen into a swamp, his flying speed decreased sharply once more. He struggled with all his might but could not escape. Just as Ji Tianqing was about to be captured by the golden palm, he hurriedly swung his broken sword at the critical moment, stabbing at the golden palm with all his might. Stab! Swish! A speck of cold light appeared, instantly piercing through the golden palm. Then, it exploded, releasing a blinding white light that blotted out the sky. Boom! Amidst a deafening muffled sound, the giant golden palm was blown to pieces on the spot, turning into countless golden fragments that splashed out. With Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's heaven-capturing palm broken, the pressure on Ji Tianqing was greatly reduced, and he hurriedly increased his speed to escape. However, Old Ancestor Sanju did not have the extravagant hope of capturing him when he used the heaven-capturing palm. It was only to delay his escape. Just as he was about to turn and flee, Forefather 3 Ultimates had already caught up to him, attacking him from behind. Thief, don't even think about escaping. 3,000 feet away from him, Forefather 3 Absolutes let out a roar filled with killing intent. He formed a sword seal with both hands and waved it at lightning speed. Milky Way 1,000 swords. He let out a low growl and continuously released hundreds of dark golden sword lights from his hands, shooting out like a rain of arrows. Swish! Swish! The hundreds of golden swords scattered, forming a huge sword net, immediately enveloping Ji Tianqing's figure. Just as Ji Tianqing was about to cast a spell to defend himself, the hundreds of golden swords quickly split into tens of thousands of golden sword lights. Swish! 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 In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of faint golden sword lights appeared, enveloping an area of 3,000 feet in the sky, forming a spherical sword net. The golden sword net spun rapidly as the tens of thousands of sword lights madly attacked Ji Tianqing, wanting to tear him to pieces. Ji Tianqing was completely drowned by the sword lights. He could not see his figure, nor could he break out of the encirclement. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes hurriedly took out 9 Soul Dharma eyes and activated his soul domain, wanting to suppress Ji Tianqing here. Swish! 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 9 half-gold and half-white soul Dharma eyes shone with golden and white light, flying in all directions and scattering in the surrounding sky. A short while later, a huge screen of golden and white light appeared, immediately enveloping an area of 100 miles. This round screen of golden and white light was like a canopy, sealing off the sky and sea region. This was Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's soul domain, the 9 Dragons' sword domain. 9,000-meter-long golden dragons could be clearly seen on the screen of light that covered the sky. They were swimming around quickly. The formless power of the domain suppressed an area of 100 miles, causing the air and sea within the screen of light to be emptied. This area of 100 miles was completely under Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's control. He was the ruler of this area. He was proficient in formations and sword techniques, so he fused these two techniques into his domain. Not only did the Nine Dragons' sword domain contain the mysteries of formations, it also contained shocking sword chi, possessing unbelievable power. When the domain was formed, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes heaved a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He became calm and confident. He had absolute confidence and certainty. Ji Tianqing was suppressed in the Nine Dragons' sword domain and had no chance of escaping. There was no doubt that he would die. Unless an Essence Soul Paragon came to save him, the Nine Dragons' sword domain was invincible. At the same time, the sword net formed by tens of thousands of golden lights gradually collapsed and dissipated. Ji Tianqing's figure appeared. He was currently wrapped in a pair of wide golden wings, standing in the sky unscathed. Clearly, he had used the Kenshin battle robe to block Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's Milky Way swords. Even if he was killed by the tens of thousands of swords, he was still safe and sound. This result was within Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's expectations. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze, carefully observing the golden wings on his back. Ha ha ha, no wonder you're so monstrous. Not only has your body been tempered to the extreme, but you also have so many powerful treasures. If I'm not wrong, your golden wings are probably an Essence Soul Paragon treasure, right? Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes grinned, revealing a sinister sneer. There was even a hint of greed in his eyes. Although he was an Ancestor-level expert who had lived for close to 2,000 years, he had never come into contact with an Essence Soul Paragon treasure. In any case, Ji Tianqing was already trapped by the Nine Dragons' sword domain and would definitely die. When the time came, the pair of wings would fall into his hands. He could borrow the power of this treasure to break through the Essence Soul realm and become a paragon. Ji Tianqing had seen through Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's scheme long ago. He stood in the sky with a cold expression, silently recovering his magic power. Earlier, he had taken the opportunity to consume a few Soul Paragon pills within the net of golden swords. Right now, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was in no hurry to attack. He would rather stall for time and catch his breath first. However, Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's soul was too powerful, and his eyes were extremely sharp. He only needed to glance at Ji Tianqing twice to see that he had already consumed pills and was rapidly recovering his strength. Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes stroked his beard, revealing a cold sneer of disdain on his old face. He said in a mocking tone, "You're quite cunning, kid. It's truly unbelievable. While blocking my Milky Way swords, you're also able to consume pills and secretly recover your magic power. If you hadn't started a massacre in my sect, I would have been delighted to see you and would have taken you in as a disciple." Chapter 1296. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows when he heard Ancestor Sanju's words and expression. Disgust filled his face. "Ancestor Sanju, I originally had some respect for you. After all, you're a progenitor who's lived for 2,000 years. However, you're clearly envious and black-hearted. You want to kill me and take my black dragon and god artifact, yet you still act so compassionate. How disgusting! Put away that disgusting face of yours. Do you really think you can take me as your disciple? Are you even worthy? Are you worthy?" These three simple words were like a sharp blade that pierced into Old Ancestor 3 Absolute's heart. This was definitely the greatest humiliation and disrespect that Ancestor Sanju had ever experienced in his life. He was instantly enraged and flew into a rage. His entire body surged with murderous intent, and his eyes were dyed with a layer of blood red. "You arrogant little bastard who doesn't know your place. You're actually so reckless. Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll satisfy you. I'll grant you death right now." Ancestor Sanju used all his strength in his fury. His sleeves fluttered as he waved his hands, controlling the power of the 9 dragons' sword domain. 10,000 swords strike. Along with his furious roar, the 9 dragons' sword domain within a radius of 50 kilometers immediately condensed tens of thousands of sharp golden swords. They erupted with an unstoppable sharp sword chi and blasted towards Ji Tianqing. Swish, 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 swish. Over 10,000 golden swords struck out at the same time. Like a storm, they immediately drowned out Ji Tianqing. The area within 15 kilometers was filled with resplendent golden light. It was so dazzling that it was hard to open one's eyes. The terrifying sword chi stabbed at Ji Tianqing wildly, wanting to grind him to smithereens. Ji Tianqing's face immediately changed when he sensed the might of the 10,000 swords. He hurriedly closed his golden wings to protect himself. Bang! 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 The endless golden swords struck the golden wings one after another, producing a series of muffled sounds. The golden wings trembled under the attack of the sword light, flashing with a dazzling golden light. Their power was rapidly declining and disappearing. Ji Tianqing was beaten to the point that his body trembled. He kept swaying and retreating, unable to bear the heavy burden. Although the Kenshin battle robe was a divine artifact, its defense was invincible. However, this divine artifact still needed his power to activate, and it would consume a large amount of magic power. Under the onslaught of the 10,000 swords, the golden wings would not be able to hold on for long before their power was exhausted. Soon, 20 breaths had passed. Ji Tianqing was killed over 10,000 times by the sword beams, and was pushed tens of miles back. Although he wasn't injured, his face was pale and he was panting heavily. The power of the golden wings was finally exhausted. They became dim and retracted back into his body. However, the power of the tens of thousands of sword lights was still abundant, and they continued to bombard him. Without the protection of his wings, Ji Tianqing could only conjure a shield of magic power to block the onslaught of the 10,000 swords. Pung pung pung. Following a series of muffled sounds, Ji Tianqing's magic power shield trembled violently, and dense cracks appeared on it. After a few breaths, his magic power shield completely collapsed, and it exploded into fragments that filled the sky. Countless golden swords struck his body, and he was sent flying back, crashing into the sea below. Every inch of his skin was pierced by the golden swords more than 100 times. Fortunately, his body was strong enough to block the attacks of the swords, and there were no wounds or bloody holes. However, his skin was dark green and purple from the attacks, and he looked extremely miserable. A heart-wrenching pain invaded his entire body, causing him to twitch and almost faint from the pain. Forefather 3 Absolutes stood high in the sky, watching Ji Tianqing being killed by the 10,000 swords and looking miserable. He immediately revealed a mocking sneer. He put his hands behind his back, looking confident, and exuding a domineering aura. "Kid, have you seen how powerful I am? It's not too late for you to admit defeat and beg for mercy now. I'm benevolent. As long as you're willing to hand over that black dragon and submit to me, I'll take you in as my adopted son, and carefully nurture and teach you." Before he could finish speaking, Ji Tianqing's angry curses came from the sword light that filled the sky. "In your King dreams. Damned old man, I'll cut you into 8 pieces one day." Forefather 3 Absolute's expression darkened, and he frowned. He said in a sinister tone, "You're really stubborn. You won't cry until you see the coffin." As he spoke, he waved his hands and cast a spell, controlling the power of the 9 dragons' sword domain. Instantly, 9,000-meter-long golden dragons flew out of the huge light shield and pounced towards Ji Tianqing with bared fangs and brandished claws. Swoosh! The 10,000 sword lights that enveloped Ji Tianqing dissipated, and the pressure on him was greatly reduced. He revealed an expression of relief. However, before he could heave a sigh of relief, the 9 golden dragons charged over from all directions, drowning his body. Boom, boom, boom. Every golden dragon extended their claws and fangs, and launched a frenzied attack on him. A golden dragon extended its huge claw, and slapped him away. He tumbled in the sky, and his head was spinning. He could not tell north from south. At this moment, another golden dragon spat out golden flames, and sent him flying back. Before he could react, he was swept by a huge dragon tail, and immediately turned around and flew to the other side. The 9 golden dragons were like cats toying with a mouse, trampling on him without restraint and kicking him around like a ball. He could not resist at all, and was covered in wounds from the attacks of the 9 golden dragons. Blood poured out of his mouth and nose, and his soul was shaken. His consciousness was somewhat blurry. Fortunately, his physical defense was strong, and that was why he could withstand such ferocious attack. If it were Lu Feiyu, she would have been torn to pieces by the 9 golden dragons long ago. Forefather 3 Absolutes stood in the sky with his hands behind his back, watching this scene with a smile. His expression became more and more mocking. So what if you're the number 1 genius of the continent? You dare to be impudent in front of me? Only death awaits you. To be able to kill such a monstrous genius is definitely the happiest thing in my life. At the same time, Ji Tianxing was anxiously thinking of a way to escape while being surrounded by the 9 golden dragons. Forefather 3 Absolute strength and the power of the 9 dragons' sword domain were so strong that it made him despair. However, he was unwilling to admit defeat, and he could not give up struggling. There was still a glimmer of hope in his heart. Burial of Heaven, do you have any way to escape from this damned domain? Burial of Heaven had been devouring soul crystals in the broken sword, and quickly recovered its strength and vitality. Now that it heard Ji Tianxing's call, it ended its cultivation and said in a low voice, "With your strength, it's already not easy for you to last so long against a half-step immortal soul expert. Although this soul domain is strong, it's nothing to me. I can break it in an instant." Chapter 1297. Hearing Burial of Heaven's reply, Ji Tianxing's heart was filled with surprise and joy. He knew very well that neither the seal of mountains and rivers nor the green light treasured tree could stop Forefather Sanju's attack. He could only place his hopes on Burial of Heaven, only then would he have a chance to escape. Fortunately, Burial of Heaven was completely confident that he could break through the 9 dragons' sword domain. He immediately transmitted his voice, "Burial of Heaven, let's think about how to get rid of Forefather Sanju later. The most important thing right now is to get me out of here. In Forefather Sanju's soul domain, he is the ruler. He can use hundreds of techniques to kill me over and over again. I only hate that I don't have the time to cultivate in seclusion. Even now, I still haven't formed my own domain. If I could form my own soul domain, I wouldn't be in such a passive situation." Burial of Heaven responded, then said in a low voice, "There are still many things you need to do. Not only do you need to cultivate in seclusion and comprehend your own soul domain, you also need to cultivate the second level of the Sword Soul Tao. In addition, you also need to comprehend the third move of Burial of Heaven's 9 swords." Hearing Burial of Heaven's reminder, Ji Tianxing gritted his teeth and made up his mind. After escaping from danger, he would definitely cultivate hard and increase his strength greatly. At this moment, the 9 golden dragons were still crazily attacking Ji Tianxing, sending him flying here and there. He was in great pain. Burial of Heaven transmitted his voice to Ji Tianxing, "I will control the divine sword. Prepare to break through." As his voice fell, he began to control the broken sword, causing the pitch-black broken sword to suddenly release a powerful and mysterious power. Swoosh! The pitch-black broken sword, which was less than 3 feet long, suddenly expanded by more than 10 times. It lit up with a mysterious black light, swallowing Ji Tianxing into the sword's world. The ferocious attacks of the golden dragons immediately hit the pitch-black greatsword, producing a series of muffled bangs. The giant sword was not affected at all. It turned into a black streak of light, passing through the 9 golden dragons with a whoosh, heading straight for the edge of the domain 30 miles away. The speed of the huge sword was as fast as an aurora, and it expanded wildly against the wind. In the blink of an eye, it had become a huge ancient sword that was hundreds of feet long. In just a breath's time, the ancient giant sword rushed to the edge of the soul domain, unleashing an unstoppable and terrifying power as it viciously stabbed at the golden light barrier. The 9 golden dragons gave chase with all their might, but they were thrown far away by the giant sword and could not catch up at all. Forefather 3 Absolutes was stunned for a moment. He frowned and looked at the huge sword with a dark gaze. Damn it! The lousy sword in that kid's hand was actually a divine artifact? He wants to rely on that broken sword to break through my 9 dragons' sword domain? This thought flashed through old Ancestor 3 Absolute's mind, and his face turned extremely cold. He wanted to chase after them to stop them, but it was already too late. Therefore, he brandished his palms and cast a spell to control the power of the 9 dragons' sword domain. Shwa! The domain barrier facing the giant sword of Burial of Heaven suddenly lit up with a dazzling golden light and underwent a miraculous change. The structure of the golden light barrier changed, and the barrier became twice as thick as before. 9 types of formations formed within the light barrier. When stacked together, the defense of the light barrier increased threefold. It could be said to be invincible below the primordial soul realm. This was already old Ancestor 3 Absolute's limit. He had sufficient confidence that the giant sword of Burial of Heaven would definitely not be able to break through the domain's seal. In the next instant, the giant sword of Burial of Heaven unleashed its greatest power and stabbed at the light barrier. Boom! An earth-shattering boom erupted, as if divine thunder had exploded from the 9 heavens. It reverberated through the sky for hundreds of kilometers. The giant sword of Burial of Heaven slammed heavily into the golden light barrier, unleashing a destructive power. The entire 9 dragons' sword domain began to tremble. The golden light barrier that spanned 50 kilometers shook violently, and dense cracks appeared on it. A hole the size of a water tank appeared on the light barrier that had been struck by the broken sword, and golden light shards flew everywhere. With his soul domain broken, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes also suffered a backlash. His soul felt dizzy and blurry. He actually lost his footing and staggered slightly, almost falling from the sky. Using this opportunity, the giant sword of Burial of Heaven suddenly shrank 100-fold, returning to its original length of 3 feet. Swish! Before the hole could be repaired, the sword of Burial of Heaven passed through the water tank hole and fled the 9 dragons' sword domain as fast as a streak of light. After leaving the 9 dragons' sword domain, the pressure on the sword of Burial of Heaven decreased drastically, and its speed doubled as well. It immediately attempted to flee into the sky. However, no one had expected that at this moment, a figure would lunge over from the sky to the side. It was a burly middle-aged man. He wielded a golden broadsword with both hands and slashed down with all his strength. Bastard, don't even think about escaping! Clang! The golden broadsword slammed into the sword of Burial of Heaven, producing a crisp clang that echoed through the sky. The sword of Burial of Heaven was caught off guard. It was sent flying on the spot, tumbling into the sea below. Only now did the sword of Burial of Heaven see clearly that the person who attacked it was Lu Feiyu, the sect master of the Heaven Evasion sect. As it turned out, Lu Feiyu had chased them all the way here but had been left far behind by Ji Tianxing and Old Ancestor 3 Absolute. While Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was busy dealing with Ji Tianxing and fighting with Ji Tianxing, he finally caught up. He couldn't enter the 9 dragons' sword domain, so he stood guard outside the soul domain, constantly paying attention to what was happening inside. Seeing the sword of Burial of Heaven escape the 9 dragons' sword domain, he rushed forward to stop it. Lu Feiyu's sudden attack didn't damage the sword of Burial of Heaven. However, the sword of burial of heaven's momentum was blocked, and it lost its best chance to escape. 2 breaths later, the sword of burial of heaven flew back into the sky like a streak of black light, fleeing into the distance. At the same time, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes had already regained his senses. He hurriedly withdrew the 9 dragons' sword domain and condensed a giant sword with his magic power. He stepped on the giant sword and flew into the sky, continuing to chase after the sword of burial of heaven. Ji Tianxing, you damned little bastard, even if I have to chase you to the ends of the earth, I will tear you to pieces. Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes roared furiously, his voice reverberating in the air above the sea. Lu Feiyu didn't dare to delay and hurriedly chased after him with all his might. The sword of burial of heaven sped ahead, while old Ancestor 3 Absolutes and Lu Feiyu chased after it. The 2 sides, one in front and one behind, were separated by 15 kilometers as they rushed deeper into the ruins of End. The sword of burial of heaven was too fast. As long as its energy wasn't exhausted, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes wouldn't be able to catch up. Taking advantage of this time, Ji Tianxing circulated his energy in the sword world to heal himself and quickly recover his strength. Unknowingly, a day passed. It was already late at night and the world was dark. There was no moon tonight, and there weren't even many stars in the night sky. The temperature of the sea was ice cold, and the cold wind whistled above the sea, bringing a thick atmosphere of killing intent to the world. The sword of burial of heaven was still flying high in the sky, not slowing down in the slightest. 50 kilometers behind it, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes chased after it with all his might, unwilling to relax at all. As for Lu Feiyu, she had long been left far behind and couldn't be seen. At this moment, the sword of burial of heaven had already reached the deepest part of the ruins of End in the East Sea. Chapter 1298. When buried heaven saw the bright moon in the gloomy sky, the blade of his sword trembled visibly. No one knew what it was thinking or what it was feeling, but it only hesitated for a moment before continuing to fly forward, heading straight for the bright moon in the sky. Then, Ancestor 3 Absolutes chased after it. He also saw the gigantic bright moon in the night sky at the end of the sea, but he did not think too much about it. He only cared about chasing after Ji Tianxing and catching up to that broken sword as quickly as possible. Whoosh! Both parties tore through the night sky one after the other, quickly flying 500 kilometers away. At this moment, both parties were extremely close to the bright moon, only 100 kilometers away. Only when they were close enough could they see clearly that there were several dozen pitch-black mountains standing on the dark sea. Each mountain was 3,000 meters tall, their surface covered in pitch-black, ancient reef. There was not a hint of green, not even a blade of grass growing. A total of 81 mysterious mountains stood on the dark sea, forming a circle. From afar, the 81 mountains looked like 81 tall and mighty guards, forming a circle to protect something. The area surrounded by the 81 mountains had a radius of 300 kilometers. This area was not the sea, but an incomparably gigantic, pitch-black abyss. Seawater gathered from all directions, passing through the gaps between the mountains and surging into the pitch-black abyss. There was not a hint of light in the abyss, making it impossible to see the bottom. One could not even hear the surging of the seawater. No one knew just how deep the abyss was or where it led to. This abyss was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much seawater poured in, it would never be filled. Directly above the bottomless abyss, in the night sky, a gigantic boulder with a radius of 5 kilometers floated. It was not an ordinary rock or reef, but a mysterious gigantic boulder that was completely milky white, like a peerless spiritual jade. The gigantic boulder was circular, like a platform with a radius of 5 kilometers. It floated motionlessly in the night sky. Its entire body emitted a bright white light, containing a divine and powerful energy. It was like a god from the 9 heavens, so noble and dignified that one could not help but worship it. It also seemed to contain the essence of the entire world, making people feel that the world was vast and boundless, as if it had existed since time immemorial. Without a doubt, this was a divine stone that seized the fortune of heaven and earth, a divine stone that was refined by the sun and moon. The bright moon in the sky that the burial of heaven and old ancestor three absolutes had seen from afar was this gigantic divine rock. Swish! The sword of burial of heaven cut through the night sky and flew to the edge of the bottomless abyss, stopping on a pitch-black mountain peak. It remained motionless in the night sky, not daring to fly any further. Immediately after, Forefather Three Absolutes flew over as well. With a swoosh, he stopped 3,000 meters away from it. He was thousands of feet away from the sword of burial of heaven, facing off against it, but he didn't dare to take another step forward. If he took another step forward, he would be close to the pitch-black mountain peak, which would mean that he had stepped into the bottomless abyss. Old Ancestor Three Absolutes stood in the night sky, frowning as he sized up his surroundings. When he saw the 81 mountains around him and the huge god's stone in the night sky, his expression changed drastically. This place it's actually here. I actually chased it all the way here. At that moment, his face turned as white as paper. His face was filled with terror, and his eyes were filled with intense fear. Even his forehead was dripping with bean-sized beads of sweat. Previously, when he was fighting with Ji Tianxing and chasing after the sword of burial of heaven, he didn't sweat at all. And now, when he saw the surrounding terrain clearly, he thought of a certain forbidden legend and broke out in cold sweat. The whistling cold wind blew over, causing his robe to flutter. His body trembled. His heart was filled with fear as he moved his feet. Stepping on the night sky, he retreated step by step. It seemed that staying near the bottomless abyss for one more breath was a great terror to him. It was because he had guessed that this was the legendary number 1 forbidden ground in the world, the platform of 9 heavens. On the Tianxian land, there was an extremely ancient legend that seemed to have originated from the ancient times. There were no boundaries between heaven and earth. The gods taught all living beings, preached and taught for the sake of good weather and peace in the human world. The common people struggled to survive and prospered. Psychics practiced martial arts and only sought to understand and communicate with heaven and earth. The weak were like ants lying in the mud. The strong were like divine dragons, roaming the 9 heavens. All prosperity and decline were determined by the heavens, and everything in the world had its own rules. However, with the arrival of a calamity that swept across the world, all the rules of the world were broken. The people were plunged into misery and suffering, and the gods fell. The former civilization and glory were burned to ashes in the flames of war. There were boundaries between heaven and earth. The weak could only hide in the mud and struggle to survive. The strong could not break the shackles and could only turn into white bones along with the vicissitudes of life. This was a fallen and despairing world. However, with the favor of the heavens, there was still a trace of hope in a hopeless situation. In this world, there was a mysterious place that connected the 9 heavens and the 9 underworld. It was called the Platform of 9 Heavens. That place was filled with the danger of being burned to ashes and the great terror of certain death. However, there was also a trace of opportunity that could connect the heavens. Since ancient times, countless experts had heard of this legend and vowed to find the platform of 9 heavens to reach the heavens in a single step. However, no matter if it was a peerless genius or a peerless genius, once they stepped into that place, it would be difficult for them to escape the fate of being burned to ashes. It was even to the extent that martial artists who had yet to become primordial soul supremes would only have a slim chance of surviving if they even approached the platform of 9 heavens. Old ancestor San Ju had lived for close to 2,000 years and was very knowledgeable. Of course, he knew of the legend of the platform of 9 heavens. Du Tian sect was originally located in the eastern sea's ruins of End, so he naturally knew that the platform of 9 heavens was at the end of the ruins of End. However, he did not know how terrifying the platform of 9 heavens was and why it was a forbidden place with no chance of survival. However, he did not doubt the authenticity of the legend. That was because his master, the founder of Du Tian sect, had died in the platform of 9 heavens. 1,800 years ago, the founder of Du Tian sect had been stuck in the half-step primordial soul realm for several hundred years and finally lost his patience. In order to find an opportunity to break through to the primordial soul realm, he did not care about the danger to his life and insisted on going to the platform of 9 heavens, wanting to risk his life. He would either die without a burial place or reach the heavens in a single step. However, the ending was very tragic. The founder of Du Tian sect had just stepped into the area of the platform of 9 heavens and had not even touched the mysterious stone platform before he was burned to ashes. At that time, old ancestor Sanju was still a young disciple and had not heard of the legend of the platform of 9 heavens. However, from then on, he firmly remembered that the platform of 9 heavens was the most terrifying place in the world. He would never go near the platform of 9 heavens in this lifetime unless he did not want to live anymore. At this moment, old ancestor Sanju's heart was filled with fear and terror. He recalled the legend of the platform of 9 heavens in his mind as he retreated step by step, gradually leaving the area of the platform of 9 heavens. Finally, 100 breaths of time passed. Chapter 1299. Forefather Sanju did not leave. He stopped 5 kilometers away from the mountain and stared at the sword of burial of heaven. Although he was in awe of the 9 heavens platform, he did not want to leave this place. However, he was unwilling to leave just like that, and it was even more impossible for him to let Ji Tianxing go just like that. The night sky was dark and the sea breeze whistled. The air was filled with a murderous aura. A man and a sword stood 10 miles away from each other, facing each other without moving an inch. Forefather Sanju calmed down and shouted coldly, "Ji Tianxing, this is the end of the ultimate. It's a dead end. You have nowhere to run now that you've escaped here. Accept your fate. Surrender obediently, and perhaps I can spare your life." The Heaven Burial's sword floated in the night sky, motionless and not making a single sound. Forefather Sanju was not embarrassed at all. He continued with a dignified expression, "Perhaps you don't know where this is. I can tell you that this is the legendary 9 heavens platform, the #1 forbidden area in the world. You only have 2 choices now. Either you enter the 9 heavens platform and die without a burial place, or you surrender to me, and you might be able to keep your life. You are a smart person and a rare genius. I believe you will make the right choice." The sword of burial of heaven remained silent. It did not make any sound or move, as if it had become one with the night sky. Forefather Sanju was not in a hurry. He stared at the sword of burial of heaven and said coldly, "I'll give you 2 hours. Think about it carefully." With that, he secretly cast a spell and released an invisible divine soul power, setting up a divine soul seal around him. He wanted to seal the surrounding sea region so that the sword of burial of heaven could not escape. Inside the sword of burial of heaven, the world within the sword. Ji Tianxing was in the city lord's mansion of peaceful Soil City, sitting in a secret room to heal himself. After an entire day of recuperation, his injuries and magic power had recovered. Even his weak divine soul had quickly recovered under the nourishment of the heaven-mending pearl. After a while, he ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. Phew! He exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and a gratified expression appeared on his face. "I've finally recovered to my peak state. I can fight another 300 rounds with old ancestor 3 absolutes." He wondered where the burial of heaven had fled to. Had he managed to shake off old ancestor Sanju? Yao Yao has been recuperating in seclusion for a few days now. How is she doing now? he muttered to himself, got up, and walked out of the secret room. 10 breaths later, he entered the secret room next door. In the dimly lit secret room, the spirit stones and the formation were shining with a faint 5-colored brilliance. Yun Yao, who was dressed in a white dress, was sitting in the middle of the array. She was concentrating on cultivating with her hands on her knees. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to investigate and found that her injuries and mana had recovered. Thus, he hurriedly woke Yun Yao up and said to her, Yao Yao, hurry and wake up. I have something important to tell you. Yun Yao heard his voice and hurriedly stopped cultivating. She opened her eyes and looked at him. Seeing that he was safe and sound, Yun Yao asked with confusion, Tianxing, how did you enter the sword world? What happened? Ji Tianxing said with a serious expression, Yao Yao, ever since you fainted, a lot of things have happened. Let me tell you in detail, then. He told her everything that happened after Yun Yao fainted, how he interrogated Ji Wucua, how he killed his way into the Heaven sect, and how he rescued the little black dragon. After hearing this, Yun Yao let out a sigh of relief. She said with a gratified expression, Thank goodness you successfully rescued the little black dragon. However, the Heaven sect is filled with powerful cultivators. How did you escape? Ji Tianxing revealed a bitter smile and explained, I caused a huge ruckus in the Heaven sect and alerted the sect master, Lu Feiyu, as well as the Grand Elder, Ancestor Sanju. Lu Feiyu is still alright as he's only at the 9th level of the spirit refinement stage. However, Ancestor Sanju has lived for 2,000 years and is a half-step into the primordial soul stage cultivator. I escaped from the Heaven sect with great difficulty, but I was chased down by the 2 of them. I don't know if the burial of heaven was able to shake them off. Yun Yao's expression changed. She revealed a look of worry. 9th level of the spirit refinement stage? Half-step into the primordial soul stage? Such power is comparable to great god He Yu and the imperial tutor. Ji Tianxing nodded. Thank goodness we had the help of the burial of heaven, which was why we were able to escape successfully. Otherwise, I would have been captured by Ancestor Sanju long ago. Yun Yao frowned slightly. She said sternly, Tianxing, what do you plan on doing now? The Jinshan King's injuries have recovered as well. How about the 3 of us work together to deal with Ancestor Sanju? Ji Tianxing shook his head and smiled bitterly. You and the Jinshan King can't do anything against experts like Lu Feiyu and Ancestor Sanju. Just stay in the peaceful Earth City and cultivate. I obtained the Neptunian God Orb from the Sun-Moon Furnace before, but I never had the chance to give it to you. I'll give this orb to you now. Fuse with and refine it as soon as possible. You might benefit greatly from it. With that, he took out an ocean blue God Orb from his space ring and handed it to Yun Yao. Yun Yao held the Neptunian God Orb. However, she was filled with mixed feelings. She said with mixed feelings, Tianxing, it's all because I've dragged you down. In order to find the Neptunian God Orb, you were forced to enter the Eastern Sea's ruin's end, which is why you've caused such a great disaster and endured such great danger. Before she could finish, Ji Tianxing held her hands and shook his head with a smile. How can I be a burden between us? Don't ever mention the word burden to me. Don't think too much. Refine the Neptunian God Orb as soon as possible. I still need to ask the burial of heaven about our current situation. Yun Yao nodded and accepted the Neptunian God Orb silently. She warned him in worry, Tianxing, you have to be careful. You can't let anything happen to you no matter what. Don't worry, Ji Tianxing waved his hand with a smile before leaving the secret room. The secret room fell silent once more. Yun Yao pondered silently for a long time before beginning to refine the Neptunian God Orb. After bidding farewell to Yun Yao, Ji Tianxing went to visit the little black dragon, Qian Yu, and the Jinshan King. The little black dragon's wounds were just too heavy. He was still in secluded cultivation, and it would probably take another half a month for him to recover. When Qian Yu underwent the heavenly tribulation, He was covered in wounds from the lightning as well. He was barely alive. Now, he was still in secluded cultivation. 80% of his wounds had already recovered, and his strength was skyrocketing. As for the Jinshan king, he had already recovered from his wounds. He was currently dealing with matters in peaceful Soil City. Only then did Ji Tianxing return to the secret room. He asked the Burial of Heaven about the current situation secretly. Burial of Heaven, where have we fled to now? Have you shaken off Ancestor 3 Severing? The Burial of Heaven remained silent for a while before replying sternly, Ancestor 3 Severing's strength is extraordinary, and his methods are extraordinary as well. I haven't shaken him off. Moreover, I've already fled to the end of the ruin's end. There's nowhere for me to run. Chapter 1300. The Nine Heavens Platform? Ji Tianxing was stunned, and his expression became extremely ugly. He instinctively wanted to leave the sword world and see what was going on outside. However, the Burial of Heaven immediately reminded him, "Don't come out. The Nine Heavens Platform is the #1 forbidden ground in the world. If you show yourself, you'll definitely be reduced to ashes." With that, it connected to Ji Tianxing's soul and presented the scene it saw clearly to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing immediately saw the Burial of Heaven's sword hovering in the dark night sky. Not far away was a dark sea, and below it was a pitch-black mountain that was 3,000 meters tall. There were 81 black mountains in the surroundings, and they surrounded a bottomless abyss. In the sky above the abyss, there was a white divine stone that was 5 kilometers wide. It was like a bright moon hanging in the sky. When he saw this, he was immediately filled with shock. His eyes were filled with surprise. The legendary Nine Heavens Platform really is at the end of the East Sea's bottomless abyss. I've read about the Nine Heavens Platform in history books before. It's said that this is the #1 forbidden ground in the world, and it's a place where death is certain. However, from the looks of it, there's no great danger here apart from the unique terrain and majestic atmosphere. The Burial of Heaven fell silent for a while before saying sternly, "You can't see the danger because your cultivation is too low." Ji Tianxing fell silent. After a pause, the Burial of Heaven continued. 1,000 years ago, Kenshin found a shattered divine pearl in the East Sea's bottomless abyss by chance. He found a strand of remnant divine power in it. After investigating and deducing, he confirmed that the divine pearl was related to the legendary goddess Yaoguang. As a result, he placed the divine pearl on the Nine Heavens Platform and let it absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and moon. Ji Tianxing hurriedly nodded. "That's right, I've heard of this. I also know that the Patriarch came to the Nine Heavens Platform over 20 years ago and took away the Neptunian divine pearl. Afterwards, the Patriarch returned to the Central Plane and used the Neptunian divine orb to save Yun Yao's life, implanting it into Yun Yao's body. Because of this, Yun Yao obtained the inheritance of Goddess Yaoguang and became the reincarnation of Goddess Yaoguang." Burial of Heaven continued. "Since you already know the whole story, you should understand the mysteries and terrors of the Nine Heavens Platform. You must value this place and take this opportunity to familiarize yourself with it. Although I don't know the exact reason, I am certain that this place will be extremely important to you in the future. It may even affect your future." Ji Tianxing's expression suddenly became serious, and he firmly remembered its words. However, he couldn't help but ask, "Burial of Heaven, could this Nine Heavens Platform have something to do with my breakthrough to the primordial spirit realm? Or, does this place have anything to do with the Kenshin?" Burial of Heaven remained silent for a long time, as if it was deep in thought and searching through its fragmented memories for any relevant information. After a long time, it said in a low and solemn tone, "I vaguely remember that Kenshin came here and stayed for a very long time. He seemed to have left the profound sky continent from here." "What?" Ji Tianxing's body trembled, and his eyes revealed a look of intense shock. Kenshin left the profound sky continent from here? Could this be the entrance to the Shenwu continent? Long before Lu Yin had left the central plain, he had discussed the ancestral demon god with Yun Yao and Burial of Heaven, as well as information about the Shenwu continent. At that time, he had learned that there were 5 vast continents in this world. However, after the Great War between the gods had placed a seal on each of the continents, causing them to be cut off from each other. However, in the tens of thousands of years since ancient times, the seal between the continents would loosen, creating some gap. This allowed an extremely small number of powerhouses to find a way to leave the profound sky continent and the opportunity to do so. Ji Tianxing pondered silently for a while and roughly understood some things. He couldn't help but murmur, "It seems that the 9 Heavens platform is the gap between the continents, which is equivalent to the door to the Shenwu continent. One day, if I can become a primordial spirit supreme and eliminate the ancient demon emperor, I will also leave the profound sky continent and pursue the martial path. At that time, I will have to come here and pass through the 9 Heavens platform to reach the Shenwu continent." At that moment, Ancestor Triforce's voice rang out from the night sky. "Ji Tianxing, the 2-hour time limit is up. You should make a choice. Step into the 9 Heavens platform and turn into ashes, or submit to me." Ancestor Triforce's voice was low and cold, and it was filled with a domineering aura. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and stared at the night sky 5 kilometers away, carefully sizing up Ancestor Triforce. This Ancestor Triforce is quite persistent. He chased me all the way here and still isn't willing to give up. He even wants to steal my black dragon and divine sword? What wishful thinking. Burial of Heaven transmitted. This person knows about the legends of the 9 Heavens platform, and he also knows that this is the world's #1 forbidden area. He definitely won't dare to step into the 9 Heavens platform. However, he's been guarding this place and isn't willing to leave. He's even set up a seal around the area, which is a troublesome matter. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Since he doesn't dare to approach the 9 Heavens platform, then it's much easier. We'll just wait with him." Burial of Heaven was silent for a while before calmly reminding Lu Yin, "Don't forget that he's lived for 2,000 years. Moreover, he's determined to obtain the black dragon and divine sword, so he definitely has enough patience." Ji Tianxing was stunned. "Then we'll see how things go." Burial of Heaven thought for a moment and reminded him, "I know what I'm doing. Leave this matter to me, and you don't have to bother with him. I'll now impart to you the 3rd move of Burial of Heaven's 9 swords. You must focus on cultivating in seclusion and try to master it as soon as possible." Ji Tianxing weighed the pros and cons for a moment before agreeing. After that, Burial of Heaven imparted the 3rd move of Burial of Heaven's 9 swords to him without missing a single word. He listened attentively twice and memorized the incantation. Then, he began to cultivate in seclusion to comprehend the 3rd move. The 3rd move was the same as the first 2 moves. It had an extremely simple name, and it was called Sword Swing. Drawing the sword, thrusting the sword, and swinging the sword. When these 3 moves were connected, it was the foundation of a martial artist's practice of the sword. It was also the origin of all sword technique. After all, this was a supreme sword technique that had returned to its original simplicity. The seemingly simple swordsmanship actually contained the world's top sword concept. Of course, from the 4th move onwards, the names of the sword techniques would not be so simple. Ji Tianxing memorized the incantation of the sword technique in his heart, and he could recite it backwards. Then, he calmed his heart and comprehended the profoundness within it. Moreover, he was deducing the circulation of magic power, the trajectory, strength, and angle of the sword in his mind. Time passed quickly. Unknowingly, another 4 hours had passed. A blazing white light flew over from afar and arrived near the 9 Heavens platform. It stopped beside Forefather 3 Absolute. It was Lu Feiyu. His face was slightly pale, and he was panting heavily. He was also rather weak, and he seemed very anxious and urgent. When he saw Forefather Three Absolutes, he let out a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Forefather Three Absolutes glanced at him unhappily and asked him why he had only arrived now. Chapter 1301. Old Ancestor Sanju also knew that when he was chasing after the Sword of Burial of Heaven, he was simply too fast. With Lu Feiyu's strength, it was impossible for him to catch up. It was understandable for him to go in the wrong direction. Seeing his awkward expression, Old Ancestor Sanju didn't say anything. After a while, Lu Feiyu calmed down. He took a pill to recover his faili as he looked around. Seeing the situation around him, and the broken sword 10 miles away, Lu Feiyu immediately frowned. His eyes were filled with shock. "Grand Elder, this place is a bit strange. Why don't you dare to go in? Could this be?" Old Ancestor Sanju stared at the broken sword. He didn't even look at him as he replied indifferently, "That's right, this is the Nine Heavens platform." Hiss! Lu Feiyu's expression changed drastically. He sucked in a breath of cold air. He even subconsciously took 2 steps back, wanting to get away from the Nine Heavens platform. As the current sect leader of the Heaven Evasion sect, he obviously knew many legends and secret. He also knew how the founder of the Heaven Evasion sect had died. After a moment of silence, he calmed down and asked seriously, "Grand Elder, that brat Ji Tianxing is hiding at the edge of the Nine Heavens platform under the protection of the Divine Sword. What should we do? Are we just going to face it like this?" Old Ancestor Sanju turned his head slightly and glanced at him indifferently. "Do you have a better idea?" Lu Feiyu didn't say anything. Although he thought that the two of them facing off against a broken sword was quite comical, he was extremely fearful of the Nine Heavens platform. He felt fear from the bottom of his heart and didn't dare to act rashly. As such, he could only stand behind Old Ancestor Sanju and face off against the Sword of Burial of Heaven from 10 miles away. Time continued to pass. The night gradually disappeared. A new day had arrived and the sun rose. At noon, the scorching sun hung high in the sky, shining down countless rays of golden light that enveloped the heavens and earth. The Nine Heavens platform seemed to have a life of its own as it crazily devoured the golden sunlight. A strange scene appeared. The Nine Heavens platform shone brightly with golden light. Sunlight couldn't reach the Nine Heavens platform, and it was as dark as ever. As for the bottomless abyss surrounded by mountains, it was as dark as night, as if it could swallow the sunlight and light. The 81 mountains around the Nine Heavens platform also exuded an invisible and majestic aura that enveloped a radius of several hundred miles. Although they were all inanimate objects, they formed an extraordinary and formless array that connected to the heavens and earth. This kind of mysterious array was definitely not something that mortals could understand. Perhaps only deities could break it. The invisible power emitted by the Heaven and Earth Great Array was enough to crush and kill any martial artist. When Forefather Three Absolutes and Lu Feiyu sensed the power of the Heaven and Earth Grand Formation, they became even more respectful towards the Nine Heavens platform. The sun rose from the east and set in the west. The day passed quickly. By noon the next day, the Sword of Burial of Heaven was still at the edge of the Nine Heavens platform. It didn't even move an inch. Old Ancestor Sanju's patience was running out. He could not hold it in any longer. He furrowed his brows and bellowed with a murderous look, "Ji Tianxing, you despicable little bastard, are you trying to stall for time with me?" The Sword of Burial of Heaven did not react at all. Old Ancestor Sanju narrowed his eyes. A cold, killing intent flashed through his eyes. "Little bastard, my patience is limited. Your time has come." As he spoke, he waved his hands and shot out 36 golden swords that shot towards the Sword of Burial of Heaven. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 36 golden swords shot towards the Sword of Burial of Heaven at the same time. They were about to hit it. However, the golden swords were suppressed by the formless power of the array just as they flew above the pitch-black mountain. They instantly disappeared without a trace. From beginning to end, the sword of burial of heaven did not move at all. It was as if it had expected this result. Old Ancestor Sanju's expression became even more unsightly. He waved his hands again, and shot out a vast amount of spiritual energy that turned into invisible spiritual blades that shot towards the sword of burial of heaven. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dozens of invisible spiritual blades instantly pierced through the sky and arrived in front of the sword of burial of heaven. However, the heaven and earth array's supreme power immediately swallowed these spiritual blades. The sky was calm as if nothing had happened. Old Ancestor Sanju was completely helpless. He cursed angrily, "Damn it! That broken sword is hiding at the edge of the ninth heaven platform. My attacks are all ineffective." Lu Feiyu's eyes turned as she hurriedly reminded him, "Old Ancestor, that broken sword is hiding at the edge of the ninth heaven platform. There is no danger. We can go over and capture it at close range. If it is fine, we will be fine too." Old Ancestor Sanju was a little hesitant. He frowned and thought for a while before nodding. "All right, although the ninth heaven platform is terrifying, it is only a legend. No one has seen it with their own eyes. I don't believe it. We are only near the edge of the ninth heaven platform. What danger can there be if we don't enter it?" With that, he brought Lu Feiyu and flew towards the sword of burial of heaven. Whoosh, whoosh. The two figures flashed and crossed 10 miles in the blink of an eye. They flew above the pitch-black mountain and arrived in front of the sword of burial of heaven. The two sides were only 3,000 meters apart. Lu Feiyu waved her golden broadsword without hesitation and slashed at the sword of burial of heaven. Earth-splitting sword. The golden broadsword condensed into a sword ray that was 300 meters long and slashed at the sword of burial of heaven. Old Ancestor Sanju also waved his palms and used a secret technique. He released 6 wild golden dragons that were 300 meters long and attacked the sword of burial of heaven. Instantly, the sword of burial of heaven was drowned in the dazzling sword ray and wild dragons. It was in the middle of a raging wave. It dodged left and right with all its might and dodged Lu Feiyu's wild attacks in the blink of an eye. However, the 6 wild dragons released by Old Ancestor Sanju were like living creatures that attacked it crazily. The sword of burial of heaven could only dodge with all its might. It could neither retreat nor take the attacks head-on. After all, it could not cross the boundary of the pitch-black mountain. Once it entered the range of the 9 heavens platform, it would face unexpected danger. In just 10 breaths, Lu Feiyu and Old Ancestor Sanju had launched over 100 wild attacks. Endless sword light and dragon shadows enveloped half of the mountain peak. Whenever the sword rays and dragon shadows came into contact with the heaven and earth formation, they would be devoured without a trace. However, the sword of burial of heaven was unable to break out of the encirclement. Instead, it was forced into a passive position and its situation became more and more dangerous. Finally, Old Ancestor Sanju sent out 2 golden palms with all his might and slammed them against the sword of burial of heaven. The sword of burial of heaven was immediately sent flying and was about to enter the 9 heavens platform. At the critical moment, it released a mysterious and powerful black light, which wrapped around Lu Feiyu who was swinging her sword at him. Lu Feiyu's expression immediately changed as he struggled in fear. No! However, he was unable to break free from the black light. The sword of burial of heaven brought him across the pitch-black mountain and into the 9 heavens platform. A man and a sword were wrapped together as they flew above the bottomless abyss. They were still several dozen kilometers away from the 9 heavens platform. Chapter 1302. Just a moment ago, the sky was still blue and the sun was shining brightly. Now, a large patch of dark clouds appeared out of nowhere and pressed down. The 9 heavens platform area within a few hundred miles turned pitch black, as if night had fallen. Above the nine heavens platform, purple lightning flashed within the dark clouds. It was obvious that they were accumulating power. Seeing this, old ancestor Sanju's body shook and his eyes widened. Although he did not know what kind of great terror was hidden in the nine heavens platform, he knew that he was in deep trouble. However, he knew that something bad was about to happen. A disaster was about to descend. Lu Feiyu, he growled anxiously, waving his palm and unleashing a huge golden palm, grabbing towards Lu Feiyu. He wanted to grab Lu Feiyu and pull him back. However, the sword of burial of heaven released a mysterious black light that wrapped around Lu Feiyu tightly, making him unable to move at all. Seeing the huge golden palm coming, the sword of burial of heaven accelerated towards the nine heavens platform. In old ancestor Sanju's eyes, the sword of burial of heaven was rushing towards the nine heavens platform to take Lu Feiyu down with it. The huge golden palm was about to catch up to Lu Feiyu. However, right at this moment, the formless heaven and earth great formation unleashed an unparalleled and vast power that crushed down ruthlessly. Crack! The huge golden palm that old ancestor Sanju struck out was instantly crushed into pieces and dissipated in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, old ancestor Sanju was in complete despair. He wanted to rush into the nine heavens platform area and try to save Lu Feiyu. However, the formless power of the heaven and earth formation formed a huge barrier that sealed off the nine heavens platform area. He had just touched the formless barrier when he was sent flying by the terrifying power. Old ancestor Sanju spat out a mouthful of blood and fell 10 miles away with a pale face. His internal organs had been shaken out of place, and his 6 organs had been damaged. His soul had also become blurry. He only stopped after flying 10 miles away. His body was bent over as he stood above the sea, panting heavily. At the same time, an unforgettable scene appeared. The burial of heaven sword wrapped around Lu Feiyu and flew a dozen miles away. They were now in the air above the bottomless abyss, not far from the nine heavens platform. From the dark clouds above the nine heavens platform, a dazzling bolt of lightning suddenly shot out and blasted towards the sword of burial of heaven and Lu Feiyu. Boom! In that instant, a thunderous explosion that shook the nine heavens resounded through the sea for thousands of miles, causing huge waves to roll up on the surface of the sea. The dazzling pillar of lightning was thousands of meters long and as thick as a giant dragon. It was like a giant sword tearing the dark sky apart. The speed of the lightning strike was too fast. Lu Feiyu and the sword of burial of heaven could not dodge it. They were instantly drowned by the dazzling lightning. Progenitor 3 Absolutes watched as Lu Feiyu was struck by the lightning beam. His body suddenly trembled and turned into black charcoal. His body curled up in a hunched position. Then, the destructive lightning power blasted his body into pieces, turning him into a large pile of black ash that spread out in all directions. In the blink of an eye, Lu Feiyu's body and soul were destroyed. He was truly reduced to ashes. Oh my God! Is this the legendary Nine Heavens Divine Thunder, the true might of Heaven Duke? Even with Lu Feiyu's strength, he could not resist at all and was reduced to ashes in an instant? Progenitor 3 Absolutes was dumbfounded. He was filled with fear and shock. He did not doubt that even if he was struck by the Nine Heavens Divine Thunder, he would end up like Lu Feiyu. He would be reduced to ashes without a corpse. When he thought of this, his back broke out in cold sweat. He only felt a lingering fear. Fortunately, he was not rash and did not rush into the Nine Heavens platform to save Lu Feiyu. After witnessing the scene of Lu Feiyu being killed by the lightning, he did not feel sad or regretful at all. He was only filled with fear and shock. He subconsciously distanced himself from the Nine Heavens platform, afraid that he would be struck by the terrifying Nine Heavens Divine Thunder. Of course, he also decided that he would never enter the Nine Heavens platform in this lifetime. At this moment, the dazzling pillar of lightning turned into millions of purple lightning arcs and dissipated with a bang. Countless lightning arcs drifted in the air and filled the entire nine heavens platform. In the black clouds that covered the sky, there were no more lightning arcs. The black clouds also gradually dispersed and disappeared. Heaven and earth regained its peace. The nine heavens platform regained its light. Progenitor 3 Absolutes stared at the nine heavens platform in a daze. After observing for a while, he suddenly realized that there was a smear of black on the nine heavens platform. He took a closer look and saw that it was a black sword. It was the sword of burial of heaven. That sword was struck by the divine thunder together with Lu Feiyu. Lu Feiyu was reduced to ashes. How is it safe and sound? Progenitor 3 Absolutes frowned and revealed an expression of shock and disbelief. He took a closer look and realized that the sword of burial of heaven was floating on the nine heavens platform, motionless. On the surface, it looked like the sword of burial of heaven was not damaged at all. But in reality, the sword was surrounded by dense purple lightning arcs that were still crackling and flashing. Those were the remnants of the nine heavens' divine thunder. Its power was still terrifying. As time passed, the lightning arcs gradually dissipated. In the end, they all disappeared. Progenitor 3 Absolutes patiently watched the entire process. His expression became more and more interesting. He revealed a look of shock, anger, greed, and helplessness. Damn it! That broken sword is indeed a divine artifact. It can actually withstand the attack of the nine heavens' divine thunder and even dissolve the remnant power of the divine thunder. What a pity! If I get it, I can definitely use its power to break through to the primordial soul realm and become a supreme being. Intense anger and greed made Progenitor 3 Absolute's face turn ashen. The veins on his forehead bulged, and he clenched his fists so tightly that they creaked. He hesitated for a long time before finally making up his mind. Wait. No matter what, he would not give up on that divine sword. Even if he had to wait 100 years, 1,000 years, until the seas dried up, he would wait until that divine sword walked out of the nine heavens platform. In my life, in the past 2,000 years, I've only heard of the 3 great imperial courts having divine artifacts that illuminated the world. It's a pity that I've never come into contact with them. Obtaining a divine artifact is my only hope of breaking through to the primordial soul realm. I definitely cannot give up this chance. Even if I have to wait until I die of old age, I must obtain that divine sword. Progenitor 3 Absolutes stood in the sky and looked at the sword of the burial of heaven on the nine heavens platform. His expression was indifferent as he muttered in a firm tone, "The divine sword is immortal. It can hide in the nine heavens platform and not come out. But that little bastard Ji Tianxing can't hide in the divine sword forever." After saying that, he took out a prayer mat made of spiritual jade from his spatial ring. He sat upright in the sky and closed his eyes to rest. He meditated to recover the magic power he had expended and heal the injuries he had suffered. At the same time, he secretly paid attention to the nine heavens platform and stared at the sword of the burial of heaven. Chapter 1303. Unknowingly, 10 days passed. The burial of heaven continued to hover above the nine heavens platform, motionless, as if it had fallen into a deep slumber. Forefather 3 Absolutes had plenty of patience. He continued to sit above the sea dozens of miles away, meditating with his eyes closed. Let alone 10 days, even if it took 10 years or 100 years, he would still wait. Inside the burial of heaven, the world within the sword. Ji Tianxing was still in Antares City. He sat in the secret chamber of the city lord's residence, quietly comprehending the third sword of the burial of heaven's 9 swords. After 10 days of contemplation, he had already grasped the true meaning of the third sword and vaguely comprehended this sword art. Sword draw stance, divine sword splitting mountains and rivers. Sword thrust stance, a cold star illuminates the heavens. This third sword move, sword swing stance, one strike can shock the world, sword light traversing 30,000 miles. Ji Tianqing muttered in a low voice as he slowly opened his eyes. His entire body exuded an invisible aura that was as sharp as a giant sword, divine and dignified. In his eyes, a soaring sword intent burst forth, tearing through the dark space of the secret chamber like lightning. I understand now. The 9 swords of the burial of heaven is the ultimate technique of the burial of heaven, not only because it encompasses all sword arts in the world, but also because it contains the ultimate will of the sword Tao. The sword is life, facing death to live, advancing courageously, facing death to live. This is the spirit and sword intent of a sword Tao martial artist. Ji Tianqing muttered in a solemn tone as he closed his eyes once more. He controlled the divine soul golden sword and entered the Kenshin tomb. Whoosh! The divine soul golden sword transformed into human form, taking his appearance. It appeared in the dark and cold wasteland, floating above the 18 tombstones. The 9 tombstones on the left were as blank as before. The 9 tombstones on the right had changed. The first tombstone originally recorded the first level of the sword Soul Tao, but it had now disappeared. The second tombstone was originally blank, but now more than 200 ancient characters had appeared. That was the cultivation method for the second level of the sword Soul Tao. Ji Tianqing stared at the words on the tombstone. After observing for an hour, he finally memorized the incantation of the cultivation technique. Then, he flew over the cold wasteland and came to the edge of the wasteland. 3,000 meters in front of him was a gray, misty area. Amidst the fog, there was an empty area with a radius of 10 miles. The ground was made of gray rock, and densely packed lines and ravines were carved into it. It was the ancient formation hidden in Kenshin's tomb, a mysterious formation that even the burial of heaven did not understand. Ji Tianqing stared at the empty area, silently reciting the sword-wielding technique in his heart. He methodically accumulated his Fa Li and prepared to use the third sword move. 10 breaths later, he held a blazing white soul spell sword and unleashed all of his spiritual energy. He suddenly swung the sword and slashed at the misty area. Swing your sword. Sword light traversing 30,000 li. Shwa. The soul spell sword cut through the sky like lightning, slashing out a blinding white sword light that was 3,000 meters long and 100 meters wide. The sword light was enormous and contained the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was like the sword of the gods but also like the wrath of the god. Bang! The indestructible, blazing white sword light slashed into the misty area and exploded with a muffled sound. Suddenly, a hurricane swept up in a radius of 10 miles. Sword chi burst forth, and chaos ensued. The gray fog surged wildly and spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, another empty area with a radius of 20 miles appeared in the misty area. Ji Tianqing slowly put down the soul spell sword, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. Great, my 10 days of hard work was not in vain. I finally mastered the third sword move. The power of the third sword move was obviously stronger than the previous 2 moves. This made him very satisfied. As long as he practiced more in the future and completely mastered the third sword move, the power of the sword move could continue to increase. He gathered his thoughts and hurriedly flew into the misty area, arriving at the empty area that had just been opened up. He saw that the empty area with a radius of 20 miles was also made of gray rock. There was no doubt that the ground was also densely covered in lines and lines, outlining an extremely ancient and mysterious formation. Ji Tianqing carefully observed for a while and found some clues. The newly opened empty area and the previous empty area were connected to each other, and it was at least 30 miles in radius. On such a vast ground, the tens of thousands of formation lines and lines were all the same and connected to each other. However, this was only the tip of the iceberg of the entire formation. He still could not find any useful clues. He still didn't know exactly how vast this mysterious grand formation hidden within the sword god's tomb was. What was the grade of this array? Why was it hidden in the Kenshin tomb? How many years had it been hidden here? Ji Tianxing had no idea. Therefore, he flew back to the 18 tombstones and reached out to touch the first tombstone. The pitch-black and cold tombstone immediately released a hazy golden light and swallowed him. Swoosh! In the next moment, he entered a strange space and stood in the middle of a sea of clouds. In front of him was an ancient bridge made of white jade, shrouded in clouds and mist. On the other side of the bridge was a mysterious pagoda. It was the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion. He stepped across the stone bridge and entered the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion, where he began to browse through ancient books and materials. He wanted to use the books in the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion to understand the origins of the mysterious formation and the Kenshin tomb. Time quickly passed, but he seemed to be unaware, immersed in the sea of books. 3 days later, he had flipped through several hundred books on formations and finally found a clue. What he was certain of was that the mysterious formation in the tomb of the Sword God was a product of the primordial era. It was extremely ancient and had existed for a very long time. At that time, the various races of the world were still under the rule of the gods and were in a period of barbarism. The martial Tao had not yet flourished. Based on the lines, patterns, and techniques of the mysterious formation, Ji Tianxing could roughly determine that it was not an ordinary formation, but a divine formation laid down by the gods. Unfortunately, this was all he could find. Who had laid down this divine formation? What kind of formation was it? Why was it hidden in the Kenshin tomb? Ji Tianxing did not know any of these questions. He could only leave them for later exploration and investigation. A moment later, he walked out of the Heavenly Sutra Pavilion and left the Kenshin tomb. Swoosh! His divine soul and golden sword returned to his body. He was still sitting in the secret room in peaceful Earth City. After frowning in thought for a while, he put the matter of the mysterious formation aside for the time being. He decided to first contact Burial of Heaven and ask about the current situation. Burial of Heaven, what is our current situation? Has Ancestor Trialt not left yet? Burial of Heaven was silent for a long time before saying in a low voice, 10 days ago, Ancestor Trialt and Lu Feiyu tried to capture me and threw me into the 9 Heavens platform. However, I dragged Lu Feiyu down with me and was killed by the divine lightning of the 9 Heavens. Chapter 1304. Ji Tianxing was stunned by Burial of Heaven's words. It can't be right? Burial of Heaven, you're a half-step divine tool. No matter how strong Lu Feiyu and old ancestor Sanju are, they can't beat you into the 9 Heavens platform. Burial of Heaven said in a gloomy tone, if it were any other day, they wouldn't be able to do anything to me. They wouldn't even be able to catch up to me. The situation at that time was special. The two of them were attacking me with all their might, and behind me was the bottomless abyss of the 9 Heavens platform. No matter how many tricks I have, no matter how powerful my divine abilities are, I can't use them. Burial of Heaven didn't seem angry when he mentioned this matter. His tone was calm and indifferent. Ji Tianxing noticed this and couldn't help but ask, if that's the case, aren't we in the 9 Heavens platform right now? Yes. Burial of Heaven replied. Ji Tianxing frowned and said with a worried tone, you're really ruthless. Even after being beaten into the 9 Heavens platform, you still want to drag Lu Feiyu down with you. The power of the 9 Heavens divine lightning is also terrifying. It actually turned Lu Feiyu into ashes. Burial of Heaven, how are your injuries? Are there any effects? Burial of Heaven said indifferently, although the 9 Heavens divine lightning is terrifying, it can't do anything to me. After all, I was once a peak divine tool. I've even withstood the Scarlet Heavens divine lightning, Golden Leaf divine lightning, and world-extinguishing heavenly lightning. However, I still need to rest for a few more days to recover my vitality. When the time comes, we can do something big. When he said the last sentence, Burial of Heaven's tone was a little playful and full of anticipation. Ji Tianxing knew that Burial of Heaven had never been emotional. No matter what happened, he was as calm and indifferent as ever. Now, Burial of Heaven actually spoke in such a tone. The big thing he was talking about was obviously not simple. What big thing? Burial of Heaven said with certainty, I can't reveal it for the time being. However, it will be greatly beneficial to you. Perhaps it will let you soar into the sky. Ji Tianxing immediately became vigilant and said in a bad mood, There's no benefit for free. The big thing you're talking about must be a huge risk, right? Buried Heaven said indifferently, Smart. I knew it. Ji Tianxing rolled his eyes. Buried Heaven exhorted again, The Grand Ancestor of Three Absolutes is determined to kill you, so he won't be leaving anytime soon. However, he wouldn't dare barge into the ninth heaven platform. I will continue to heal my injuries. You should seize the time to cultivate your sword soul Dao. I'll tell you what to do once you're done with your seclusion. Ji Tianxing didn't beat around the bush. He simply replied, All right, it's settled then. After that, the two stopped communicating and fell silent. Burial of Heaven continued to recuperate. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged in the secret room and started to cultivate the second level of the Way of the Sword Soul. The first level of the Way of the Sword Soul taught him how to control the power of heaven and earth, how to use his own mana, and how to condense a spirit sword. The second level of the Way of the Sword Soul was of course even more profound and extraordinary. Other than multiplying his mana and increasing the strength of his mana, it could also condense his soul and greatly increase the power of his spirit sword. Most importantly, when the second level of the Way of the Sword Soul was cultivated to a high level, he could use his spirit sword to condense a unique sword domain. Previously, when Ji Tianxing was fighting with Ancestor Sanju also used his spirit sword domain. It was called the Nine Dragons Sword Domain. However, it wasn't the real sword domain. It was an imitation of the sword domain using the spirit eyes and formations. The spirit sword domain derived from the Way of the Sword Soul was the real sword domain. It was unique and unparalleled in the world. After understanding this point, Ji Tianxing was excited. He thought with anticipation, After so long, I've battled so many powerful spirit cultivators. Most of them have condensed their spirit sword domains, which can increase their battle prowess exponentially. If I can condense my sword domain soon, my battle prowess will increase exponentially. How strong will I be then? Therefore, he focused all his attention on comprehending the Way of the Sword Soul. He only wanted to reach the second level of the Way of the Sword Soul as soon as possible. The secret room was dark and silent. Time passed quietly. Unknowingly, 3 days passed. Ji Tianxing understood the Way of the Sword Soul and tried to cultivate it. He cultivated for 2 whole days and tried thousands of times before he finally reached the second level of the Way of the Sword Soul. The vast and boundless golden mana was like a torrential river. It surged violently in his body, making the sound of wind and thunder. Every time he cultivated, he could clearly feel the mana in his body increase by a bit. The power of his spirit was also increasing. The exhilarating feeling of his power increasing made him full of joy and desire. He forgot about the passage of time and focused on cultivating, trying his best to break through to the 6th level of the spirit cultivation realm. Very quickly, 20 days passed. Ji Tianxing cultivated with all his might for 20 days. His mana and strength had increased by 2 times. He was already very close to the 6th level of the spirit cultivation realm. At the same time, the Burial of Heaven had already recovered from its injuries. It was still floating on the 9 heavens platform, crazily devouring the spiritual energy of the sun and moon on the platform to recover its strength. Not only was the 9 heavens platform dangerous, it was also the place where the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the power of the stars gathered. It was the world's top cultivation holy land. However, if one wanted to cultivate here, they had to be able to withstand the nine heavens' divine thunder. Outside the nine heavens platform, on the surface of the sea dozens of miles away, old ancestor Sanju was still sitting on the jade cushion, patiently meditating. He had already waited for a month. The anxiety in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. Fortunately, his mana was deep and his mind was as calm as still water. That was why he was able to endure. He kept eliminating the distracting thoughts in his heart and maintained a firm and persistent attitude as he continued to wait. Very quickly, another 5 days passed. There were no changes inside or outside the nine heavens platform. It was just as peaceful as before. However, in the sword world, Ji Tianqing had already ended his seclusion and successfully broken through to the 6th layer of the spirit refinement realm. After reaching the 6th layer of the spirit refinement realm, his strength had increased by 2 times. His mana had also become more vigorous, and his bearing had also changed slightly. Right now, he was no longer as domineering as before. His aura was sharp and threatening. His aura had become even more restrained, becoming vigorous and steady. He gave off an invisible, transcendent aura. Of course, this change in aura and bearing would gradually deepen and become more pronounced as his strength increased. After ending his seclusion, Ji Tianqing contacted the Burial of Heaven eagerly. Burial of Heaven, I've already ended my seclusion and successfully broken through to the 6th layer of the spirit refinement realm. Can you tell me what we're going to do now? The Burial of Heaven remained silent. After secretly observing his strength, it said in a deep voice, "Yes, with your current strength, you barely qualify." 1,000 years ago, when Kenshin came to the nine heavens platform, it was not just to find a passage to another continent. It was also for the Neptunian divine orb. Moreover, he drew down the divine thunder on the nine heavens platform, using the power of the nine heavens divine thunder to temper his astral body, refine his mana and soul, and strengthen the power of his sword domain. Chapter 1305. That's right. Burial of Heaven said in a low and solemn voice, "You can also imitate Kenshin and trigger the nine heavens divine thunder to temper your body and divine soul. As long as you succeed, your strength will definitely make a qualitative leap, and you can even be said to be invincible under the primordial soul realm." I was right. The more benefits you want, the more dangers you have to bear. Ji Tianqing smiled bitterly, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Although he had long guessed that the big thing Burial of Heaven was talking about must be very dangerous. But he didn't expect it to be so crazy. Burial of Heaven, I'm afraid this big thing can't be done. Let's think about it again. Even an expert like Lu Feiyu was turned into ashes on the spot after being struck by the nine heavens divine thunder, and his soul scattered. I still have to trigger the divine thunder? What's the difference between that and seeking death? At that time, before the divine thunder can temper my body and divine soul, I will be turned into charcoal, or even a handful of ashes. Ji Tianqing shook his head repeatedly, decisively rejecting Burial of Heaven's proposal. Burial of Heaven was very calm, and explained unhurriedly, "Tianqing, didn't you always say that riches and honor are found in danger? If you don't go through a difficult test, how can you become a person above others?" Ji Tianqing retorted angrily, "Is this a difficult test? This is not a risk at all, it's completely suicide, okay?" Burial of Heaven was not angry and said calmly, "Since you met me, when have I ever tricked you? Don't you have even this little bit of trust between us?" Ji Tianqing was speechless, and could only remain silent. Burial of Heaven continued to persuade, "Don't worry, I have thought and weighed this matter repeatedly, and I have a 50% chance of success." 50% chance? Ji Tianqing frowned and said rather speechlessly, "It sounds like the probability is not small, but isn't it half success and half failure? Live or die?" Burial of Heaven fell silent for a moment before continuing to persuade him. In fact, the nine heavens divine lightning that descended from the nine heavens platform is the divine lightning that an essence soul supremacy would have to withstand when breaking through to the ninth tribulation realm. It's not as terrifying as you imagine. Your corporeal body has been tempered by the sun-moon divine fire, forming the foundation and embryo of the astral divine body. You can be said to be invincible under the primordial spirit realm. Besides, don't you have the lightning Dharma eye? That Dharma eye could also absorb the power of the nine heavens divine thunder, so it would definitely benefit from it. In addition, I will also help you share a portion of the divine lightning's power. I will definitely not let you be killed by the divine lightning. This matter is extremely risky, but the rewards are also astonishing. Think about it carefully. After that, Burial of Heaven didn't say anything else and let Ji Tianxing make the choice. Ji Tianxing pondered in silence for a long time before he finally made up his mind. However, before announcing his decision, he still asked worriedly, Burial of Heaven, back then, Kenshin attracted the divine lightning from the nine heavens platform and later discovered the passage to Shenwu continent? Burial of Heaven hesitated for a moment before replying, that should be the case. Ji Tianxing felt that its answer was a little forced, but he didn't fuss over it and immediately agreed to the matter. Forget it. In any case, we are trapped in the nine heavens platform and can't escape for the time being. Besides, there's still half a year before Prefecture Lord takes Yun Yao out of the profound sky continent. I don't have much time left, so I can only use this method to quickly increase my strength. When Burial of Heaven saw that he had finally agreed, it said in a gratified tone, That's right. It's good that you understand. The greater the pressure, the greater the motivation. Since ancient times, there have been as many martial arts geniuses as there are hairs on a cow, but how many of them can reach the peak of martial arts? Most of the geniuses are overcautious and afraid of death. They don't dare to face death head-on, which is why their achievements are limited. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself with a complicated expression on his face, Put yourself in a desperate situation and fight to survive. These words were too apt to describe what he was about to do. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianxing adjusted his state of mind and made all his preparations. He then said, Burial of Heaven, I'm ready. Burial of Heaven hurriedly replied, All right, then let's begin. As soon as it finished speaking, the pitch-black broken sword flashed, and the exit to the sword world opened. Ji Tianxing involuntarily flew out and left the sword world to appear on the nine heavens platform. It was currently noon, and the sky was a clear blue with only a few white clouds floating in it. The nine heavens platform, which had a radius of 5 kilometers, blossomed with a resplendent golden brilliance, making it seem especially divine and gorgeous. The bottomless abyss below the platform was shrouded in gloomy shadows, making it seem extremely mysterious. The 81 tall mountains in the surroundings were like tall and sturdy warriors, forever guarding the nine heavens platform. This was the first time Ji Tianxing saw the nine heavens platform with his own eyes, and he was stunned by the majestic scene. His eyes were filled with admiration. However, in the next instant, his expression changed. The originally clear sky was suddenly filled with wind and clouds, and endless black clouds appeared out of nowhere. The black clouds covered a radius of a few hundred kilometers, and covered the entire nine heavens platform. The nine heavens platform became dark, as if night had fallen. What was even more terrifying was that there were countless arcs of lightning flashing within the black clouds, and they were crazily accumulating lightning energy. A formless and majestic force, as if Mount Tai, was pressing down on Ji Tianxing. He stood on the nine heavens platform, and his body was bent over due to the pressure. His face was pale as he bent over, and all the bones in his body emitted cracking sounds. What a powerful divine power of heaven and earth! The nine heavens divine lightning has not yet descended, and all the bones in my body are about to be crushed. The power of heaven is indeed terrifying. Ji Tianxing stubbornly held on, and he desperately circulated the galaxy body tempering art to dispel the terrifying pressure. At the same time, on the surface of the sea dozens of kilometers away, Elder Sanju, who was meditating, suddenly opened his eyes. He sensed the changes on the Nine Heavens platform, and he hurriedly stopped circulating his energy. When he saw the black clouds rolling in the sky, and the sky was as dark as night, his expression changed instantly. "What's going on? Divine lightning has descended on the Nine Heavens platform again? Could it be that the divine sword?" He muttered to himself, and suddenly, he saw a figure on the Nine Heavens platform. Although he was very far away, his eyesight was extraordinary, and he could see clearly that it was a handsome young man in a white robe. It was Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing. He is not hiding in the divine sword, and he is actually on the Nine Heavens platform? Elder Sanju's eyes widened, and an incredulous expression appeared on his face. However, his heart was filled with excitement and ecstasy. "Ha ha! This is great! Ji Tianxing, that brat, can't continue hiding in the divine sword, and he has finally revealed himself. The Nine Heavens divine lightning is forming, and he has nowhere to run. He is about to be blasted into ashes by the divine lightning. After he dies, the divine sword will be an ownerless item, and I will have full confidence that I will be able to take the divine sword." Chapter 1306. On the Nine Heavens platform, black clouds covered the sky and lightning flashed. It was a scene of apocalypse. The lightning arcs in the black clouds only brewed for 3 breaths before they condensed into the ninth heaven's divine thunder. Kaboom! Following a massive explosion that shook the 9 heavens, a massive pillar of purple lightning that was as long as a dragon came crashing down from the black clouds. In that instant, the deafening sound of thunder spread through the sea for thousands of miles. The 81 mountains around the 9 heavens platform and the surrounding hundreds of miles of sea were all shaken. Such a terrifying 9th heaven's divine thunder could really destroy everything. In just a quarter of an instant, the terrifying pillar of lightning struck Ji Tianxing and the sword of burial of heaven. However, the two of them were already prepared. They had accumulated their most powerful strength to welcome the descent of the 9th heaven's divine thunder. The sword of burial of heaven floated above Ji Tianxing's head and was the first to be struck by the 9th heaven's divine thunder. The incomparably violent pillar of lightning sent it tumbling violently. It trembled and buzzed incessantly, and it even flashed with a mysterious black light. Endless lightning and lightning arcs wrapped around the broken sword and wantonly invaded the blade, wanting to shatter the sword into pieces. However, the sword of burial of heaven withstood the attack of the lightning. The sword was not damaged, but it was wrapped in dense lightning arcs that would take 10 days to half a month to dissolve. This was the first time Ji Tianxing and the burial of heaven had tried it, so the burial of heaven helped Ji Tianxing bear 70% of the divine thunder's power. When the pillar of lightning struck him, only 30% of its power was left. Even so, the moment he was submerged in the pillar of lightning, he let out a painful groan. His teeth were clenched so tightly that they bled. In that instant, his white robes and clothes, as well as his long hair, were all turned into pitch-black ashes by the lightning. Even his body that had been tempered to the extreme was instantly charred black. He curled up like a shrimp, as if he had been burnt to a crisp. The extremely strong and violent thunder power turned into billions of electric arcs that burrowed into his body like sharp blades and thorns. Every pore of his body, every inch of his flesh, every piece of his marrow, and every piece of his blood were enduring the bombardment and crushing of the divine thunder of the 9 heavens. That kind of extreme pain was as if he was being cut into 108,000 pieces, as if he was being crushed into meat paste or mud. Ji Tianxing was certain that there was nothing more painful than this in the world. Even his divine soul golden sword had been shattered by the lightning, and dense cracks had appeared all over it. His mind was in a blur, and he had lost his 6 senses. His body was completely numb. This was good too. At least he wouldn't feel any pain and wouldn't faint. Boom! An earth-shattering pillar of lightning came crashing down like a flood, enveloping him and slamming him heavily onto the nine heavens platform. With a deafening muffled sound, the lightning beam also exploded, spreading in all directions. The divine thunder of the nine heavens shattered, transforming into 990 million purple electric arcs that scattered in the sky for hundreds of kilometers. This area turned into a purple world of lightning. Dense electric arcs floated in the sky, looking extremely gorgeous. At the very least, Patriarch 3 Absolutes was so shocked that his heart raced when he witnessed this scene with his own eyes. Cold sweat broke out all over his body. Oh my God! Ji Tianqing must be in so much pain that he wishes he was dead after being struck by the divine thunder of the nine heavens, right? However, he was instantly reduced to ashes. He shouldn't feel any pain. The divine thunder of the nine heavens is so terrifying. I wonder if I can withstand it when I reach the peak of the Essence Soul Realm and attempt to break through to the ninth Tribulation Realm? Patriarch 3 Absolutes thought that Ji Tianqing was definitely dead, so he didn't think too much about it. He was still considering how he should transcend the tribulation in the future. However, he was dumbfounded the next moment when he saw the situation on the Nine Heavens platform. He saw a charred corpse lying on the jade-white Nine Heavens platform. The corpse was surrounded by lightning arcs. It didn't shatter and was still very well preserved. What was even more terrifying was that the corpse trembled a few times. It was clearly not dead. He slowly raised his arms and supported his charred body. Then, with great difficulty, he slowly sat up. The most inconceivable scene appeared. He actually assumed a cultivation posture of 5 hearts facing the heavens. Patriarch 3 Absolute's eyes widened as though he had seen a ghost in the day. He roared in horror, "Is he a zombie? No. This is impossible. This isn't real. This is too absurd." Even Lu Feiyu was reduced to ashes by the divine thunder. With Ji Tianqing's strength, how can he survive a bolt of divine thunder? My eyes must be playing tricks on me. It must be. Patriarch 3 Absolutes was shocked and furious. His body trembled as his eyes kept changing. He was about to break down. He couldn't accept this outcome at all and didn't recover for a long time. At the same time, Ji Tianqing was enduring incomparable pain as he sat on the Nine Heavens platform and cultivated. Although he wasn't dead, he was only left with his last breath. His fleshly body had been completely destroyed. Every bit of his flesh and bone had been scattered and separated. What he needed to do now was to reassemble his body that had been cut into 108,000 pieces. The burial of heaven was also severely injured. Lightning flashed on the sword and didn't disappear for a long time. Its weak and low voice sounded in Ji Tianqing's mind. It reminded him, "Tianqing, I know you are in so much pain that you want to die. But you must endure it. Hold on. Now is the best time for you to use the power of the divine thunder to refine your soul and reassemble your body." Ji Tianqing didn't answer. He didn't have any more energy to speak. But he remembered the burial of heaven's words. He stubbornly held on with the last breath in his heart and the belief in his soul. He mobilized the remaining magic power in his body bit by bit and started to slowly circulate the galaxy body refining art. Then, he used the miraculous effect of the galaxy body refining art to repair his body bit by bit and reassemble it. At the same time, he also cultivated the sword Soul Dao. He controlled 6 soul magic swords and 1 soul golden sword to gradually refine the power of the divine thunder. He soon entered a state of cultivation and forgot everything outside his body. The Nine Heavens platform regained its peace. The dark clouds gradually dispersed and the lightning arcs that filled the sky all disappeared. Time flowed by and 3 days passed quickly. Ji Tianqing cultivated continuously for 3 days and finally recovered some of his vitality. His life aura was much stronger and his soul power had also recovered by 20%. Moreover, his internal organs, blood vessels, and bone marrow were reorganized by the miraculous effect of the galaxy body refining art. After being refined by the divine thunder of the 9 heavens, his internal organs, blood vessels, and bone marrow were reborn from the destruction and had a wonderful change. Originally, his internal organs and bone marrow were golden. Now, they had a trace of purple and contained the power of thunder. Such an inconceivable result caused Ji Tianqing's spirits to rise, and he became even more impatient to cultivate. Chapter 1307. Ji Tianqing was doing 3 things at once, using the power of the 9th heaven divine thunder to refine his body, spirit, and eyes. Burial of Heaven was not in a hurry to heal his injuries. It was secretly observing his situation, afraid that something would happen to him. After a moment of silence, it said in a low voice, "Tianqing, don't be too greedy. More haste, less speed." Ji Tianqing was cultivating as he replied, "The pain of being struck by the 9th heaven divine thunder is the worst in the world. I don't want to go through it a second time. Of course, I have to finish it in one go." Burial of Heaven said leisurely, "Just now, you only endured 30% of the power of the divine thunder. This cultivation is just to build your foundation." Ji Tianqing was shocked. He said vigilantly, "Burial of Heaven, what do you mean?" Burial of Heaven said calmly, "There will be a second time, a third time." "Are you kidding?" Ji Tianqing's tone had a trace of pain and struggle. Buried Heaven said unhurriedly, "Tempering it once isn't enough to achieve the best effect. After you return to your peak state, you have to refine a few more times until you reach your limit. Moreover, every time you refine, the power of the divine thunder you have to endure will increase by 10%. Kenshin did this back then. He triggered the 9th heaven divine thunder 3 times, and finally refined his body, spirit, and sword realm to perfection. Therefore, when he killed his way to another continent, he was also invincible. Ji Tianqing was silent. Although it was extremely painful to endure the 9th heaven divine thunder, it was simply the most terrifying nightmare. However, his desire for strength was even more important than his life. As early as when he inherited Kenshin's secret technique, he vowed to become a peerless powerhouse like Kenshin. Now, under the guidance of Burial of Heaven, he embarked on Kenshin's path of cultivation. How could he be afraid and retreat? After a while, he said to Burial of Heaven, "I've already been struck by lightning once, so I don't mind being struck a few more times." Seeing that he had agreed, Burial of Heaven didn't say anything else and went to heal himself. Ji Tianqing continued to multitask and cultivated with all his might. The sun and moon rose from the east and set in the west. Day after day passed. Unknowingly, half a month passed. After cultivating for half a month, Ji Tianqing had undergone earth-shaking changes. Originally, he was charred black and covered in cracks. A gust of wind would blow away a lot of black ashes. But now, he had recovered his original appearance. His skin was sparkling like jade, suffused with gold and light purple, appearing extremely mysterious. His physical body was as good as new from the inside out, and it was about 2 times stronger than before. His defense and strength were extremely terrifying. The Divine Soul Golden Sword and the 6 Paths Divine Soul Magic Swords in his mind had also completely recovered. Moreover, both the Golden Sword and the Blazing White Magic Sword contained a faint purple color. Clearly, they had absorbed the divine power of thunder. In addition, the Thunder Dharma eye on his forehead had also undergone a miraculous change. Originally, it was a golden Dharma eye with an azure pupil. The lightning it contained was also azure. Now, the Dharma eye was still golden, but the pupil had become a faint purple color, accumulating terrifying lightning power. Now, Ji Tianqing's physical body was comparable to a half-step essence soul realm cultivator. His magic power and soul had also reached the 9th level of the spirit refinement realm. If he were to face Lu Feiyu again, he could kill him in 3 to 5 moves. Even if he were to face old ancestor Sanju, he could fight for hundreds of rounds without being at a disadvantage. But he wasn't satisfied. These transformations were far from enough. He asked Burial of Heaven about the situation. After learning that Burial of Heaven's injuries had already recovered, he decisively asked for a second round of tempering. Burial of Heaven didn't waste any time and immediately taught him the lightning summoning technique to attract divine lightning. Thus, Ji Tianqing waved his palms and used the lightning summoning technique. 2 giant golden palms slammed onto the 9 heavens platform. Following a muffled bang, white light flashed on the 9 heavens platform. Fierce winds howled in the sky. Endless black clouds appeared out of nowhere and covered the entire 9 heavens platform. In the dense black clouds, lightning arcs flickered violently. It was gathering the divine lightning of the 9 heavens. Ji Tianqing stood on the 9 heavens platform and looked up at the black clouds and lightning in the sky. He was prepared to welcome the divine lightning. Above the sea, dozens of miles away from the 9 heavens platform, old ancestor Sanju was sitting on a praying mat. He was meditating cross-legged and circulating his energy for 1.5 months. In the past month, he had personally witnessed Ji Tianqing being killed by the divine lightning of the 9 heavens and miraculously coming back to life. His emotions were incomparably complicated. He was shocked and in disbelief. He only felt that his worldview had been turned upside down, especially when he found out that Ji Tianqing's injuries were recovering quickly and his strength was increasing explosively. He was so jealous that he wanted to vomit blood. Previously, he had thought that after Ji Tianqing was killed by the divine lightning, he would be able to obtain the divine sword. However, not only did Ji Tianqing not die, but he had also become stronger. This made him lose his patience. There were many times when he could not help but want to charge into the 9 heavens platform and kill Ji Tianqing with his own hands. However, he had seen the terrifying power of the 9 heavens divine lightning. After weighing the pros and cons for a long time, he finally gave up. After all, he did not have Ji Tianqing's fearless courage. He did not dare to gamble with his own life. He had not lived long enough. Now, the 9 heavens platform was once again stirred up. Old ancestor Sanju was immediately awakened. He suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the 9 heavens platform. When he saw Ji Tianqing take the initiative to cast a spell and summon the divine lightning of the 9 heavens, his expression changed greatly. His expression became incomparably interesting. Heavens! What is that kid doing? Damn bastard! He actually took the initiative to summon the divine lightning. Why is he not afraid of death? Is he tired of living? Old ancestor Sanju was stunned. His eyes widened in disbelief as he let out a cry of surprise. In the next moment, a thunderous boom resounded through the world. Kaboom! A lightning pillar that was thousands of feet long emerged from the dark clouds. It carried a terrifying power that could destroy the world as it struck towards Ji Tianqing. The dark night sky within a few hundred miles was illuminated by the terrifying lightning. Half of the sky was purple. In an instant, the lightning pillar struck the sword of Burial of Heaven, causing the blade to tremble violently and emit a series of sword cries. The broken sword was enveloped by the purple divine lightning. Dense arcs of electricity curled around the sword. There was also an endless amount of divine lightning that rushed into the sword, destroying the structure of the divine sword. The sword of Burial of Heaven helped Ji Tianqing block most of the divine lightning. When the lightning pillar struck Ji Tianqing, it still had 40% of its power left. Even so, he repeated the same mistake. He was struck into a pitch-black charcoal just like before. He curled up like a shrimp and crashed heavily onto the 9 heavens platform. The lightning pillar struck the 9 heavens platform again and instantly exploded, turning into millions of arcs of electricity that spread out. However, what no one noticed was that most of the lightning had entered the 9 heavens platform. It seemed to have passed through some lines and patterns, disappearing without a trace. After a long while, the dark clouds that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The purple arcs of electricity that filled the sky also finally disappeared. Chapter 1308. Forefather 3 Absolutes stared at the figure on the 9 Heavens platform carefully. After being stunned for a moment, he suddenly came back to his senses and came to a realization. I understand now, so that's how it is. Ji Tianqing, that little bastard. He purposely attracted the 9 Heavens' divine lightning to kill me and borrowed the power of the divine lightning to cultivate. My God, isn't this too crazy? Since ancient times, all the experts have feared the lightning tribulation like a tiger. But this brat is actually so fearless that he dares to use the 9 Heavens' divine lightning to temper his body to cultivate. Is this brat still human? Forefather 3 Absolutes was so shocked that his entire body trembled, and his face turned slightly red. He was an expert at the level of a 1,000-year-old demon, and his state of mind was as still as water. There were very few things that could cause his emotions to fluctuate. But ever since he met Ji Tianqing, he had suffered one shock after another. Now, he was almost numb from the shock. He was simply unable to imagine exactly how monstrous Ji Tianqing was to actually be able to do such a crazy thing that shocked the ages. However, he could only watch helplessly. He was completely powerless to stop Ji Tianqing. All he could do was pray silently in his heart, hoping that Ji Tianqing would fail in his cultivation and go berserk. Or, the next time he attracted the 9 Heavens' divine lightning, he would be blasted into smithereens. Time passed, and soon another half a month had passed. This time, Ji Tianqing had the previous experience, and his cultivation was very smooth. Even though he had endured 40% of the divine lightning's power, he still recovered to his peak state in half a month, and completed the tempering of his body, divine soul, and Dharma eye. When he finished cultivating, his body's defense, strength, and toughness had all increased by 2 times. The power of his divine soul had also increased by 2 times, and the power of lightning it contained was more abundant. His lightning Dharma eye had also turned purple, evolving into the divine eye of lightning, which could release terrifying divine lightning. But this was not the end. With the help of the burial of heaven, he began the 3rd tempering. He used the lightning drawing technique again, attracting the 9 Heavens' divine lightning. On the 9 Heavens' platform, black clouds covered the sky, and thunder rumbled and lightning flashed. When the huge divine thunder light beam came down, the sword of burial of heaven was the first to bear the brunt of the divine thunder light beam, taking 50% of the power for him. Ji Tianqing was once again blasted into charcoal and fell heavily to the ground. Unlike before, when he fell to the ground, he was still conscious. Moreover, after the burial of heaven's reminder, he paid special attention to the 9 Heavens platform. He saw with his own eyes that the lightning beam exploded into millions of purple lightning arcs that spread out in all directions when it hit the 9 Heavens platform. However, most of the lightning energy drilled into the 9 Heavens platform and disappeared along the mysterious patterns and lines. He roughly memorized the patterns and lines, and then no longer paid attention to it. A moment later, he struggled to sit up and began his 3rd round of cultivation. When old ancestor Sanju saw this scene in the distant sky above the sea, he had long since become numb from the shock. He saw with his own eyes how Ji Tianqing attracted the divine thunder and used the power of the thunder to cultivate. His strength grew stronger each time. Unfortunately, he was powerless to stop it, and he had nowhere to vent his anger and jealousy. In fact, after he calmed down, he had to consider a problem. Every half a month or so, Ji Tianqing would be killed by the divine thunder, and his strength would increase by several times. If this situation continues, he will cultivate for another month or 2, and his strength will increase by several times. At that time, I will also be helpless against him, and will not be able to snatch the divine sword. No, I have to think of a way to stop him, I can't let him continue to grow stronger. Old ancestor Sanju made up his mind, and racked his brains to think of a way. He tried to use several secret techniques to attack Ji Tianxing on the Nine Heavens platform through the formless heaven and earth great formation. However, after he used the secret techniques, the sword lights, dragon shadows, and all kinds of magical attacks disappeared without a trace the moment they entered the Nine Heavens platform. Ji Tianxing on the Nine Heavens platform was not affected at all. After this method failed, old ancestor Sanju quickly thought of another method. He decided to use his magic treasure to attack Ji Tianxing, and let the magic treasure self-destruct, perishing together with Ji Tianxing. Even if his magic treasure was unable to injure Ji Tianxing, it was not bad that it could attract the divine thunder of the Nine Heavens. Ji Tianxing was cultivating in seclusion, and once he was struck by the divine thunder of the Nine Heavens, he would die without a doubt. Old ancestor Sanju was full of confidence in this method, so he used all his capital, and did not hesitate to use 2 high-grade soul tools and 1 top-grade soul tool. He used all his strength to cast the technique, and used 3 magic treasures to attack Ji Tianxing. However, the moment the 2 high-grade soul tools entered the Nine Heavens platform, they were crushed into pieces by the heaven and earth great formation, and exploded on the spot. The 2 magic treasures shattered into pieces, and fell into the bottomless abyss below, not even causing a splash. The 3rd top-grade soul tool exploded with a powerful might, and attracted a bolt of divine thunder of the Nine Heavens. However, that bolt of divine thunder was only 100 meters long, and was only as thick as a water tank. With a boom, it turned the magic treasure into pieces. Furthermore, this divine lightning appeared out of thin air. There were no dark clouds or gloomy scenes at all. Therefore, Ji Tianxing, who was on the Nine Heavens platform, was not affected at all. This result caused old ancestor Sanju to be filled with disappointment and anger, and he almost vomited blood. He was completely helpless and could not do anything else. However, his heart was filled with hatred, and he was filled with anger and unwillingness. How could he give up like this? He stared at Ji Tianxing's movements while thinking hard, and swore that he would not stop until he killed Ji Tianxing. Time flew, and soon, half a month had passed. Ji Tianxing's 3rd divine thunder body tempering was completed, and his physical body was restored to its original state. This time, his cultivation was even smoother, and he had absorbed a huge amount of divine thunder, and his strength had increased by nearly 3 times. More importantly, he had successfully broken through to the 7th level of the soul refinement realm, and condensed his 7th soul magic sword. In a short 4 months, he had risen by 4 levels, reaching the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. Such a terrifying speed of leveling up was simply shocking and unprecedented. His body, soul, and magic power had all reached the limit of the soul refinement realm, and were comparable to a half-step essence soul realm cultivator. From this moment onwards, he was an invincible existence under the essence soul realm. If he faced old ancestor Sanju again, not only would he be invincible, he would also have a high chance of winning. However, he was not in a hurry to deal with old ancestor Sanju, and first tidied up his appearance. He was not wearing any clothes, and one could clearly see that his skin was sparkling like jade, and contained a faint gold and faint purple color. His long hair had grown out again, and he tied it into a bun, and put on a luxurious jade crown. He stretched his limbs, took out clothes from his interspatial ring, and put on a white robe with cloud patterns. After doing all this, he walked towards the center of the Nine Heavens platform, and carefully observed the ground under his feet. He still remembered what the Burial of Heaven had said, that the Nine Heavens platform was the passage to other continent. Chapter 1309. Previously, when Ji Tianxing attracted the divine lightning to strike the Nine Heavens platform, he discovered that 80% of the lightning entered the platform. Moreover, the lightning followed the densely packed lines and veined patterns into the nine heavens platform before disappearing. Those complicated lines and patterns seemed to be some kind of mysterious array to him. However, when he carefully observed the nine heavens platform, he saw that the ground was as smooth as a mirror. There were no patterns or lines at all. The entire nine heavens platform was like a perfect piece of natural jade. There was no trace of artificial carving. This made him suspicious and puzzled. The nine heavens platform is a complete piece of divine stone that floats in the sky. If there is a way to other continents from here, it must be through some kind of array. However, there are no lines or patterns on the platform. How can there be an array? Buried heaven reminded Tianqing when he heard Tianqing mumbling to himself. Tianqing, when the divine thunder penetrated the ninth heaven platform, when the thunder beam struck earlier, those lines and veins appeared. Tianqing frowned. After thinking for a while, he asked tentatively, "Do you mean that those lines and patterns do form an array, but they are inside the nine heavens platform? Furthermore, they must borrow the power of the divine lightning to make the array appear?" Burial of Heaven replied calmly, "You can understand it that way." Tianqing nodded and said thoughtfully, "If this hypothesis is true, it means that the power of the divine lightning can enter the nine heavens platform and even activate the array. It just so happens that I have tempered myself with the divine lightning 3 times. My body and soul contain a vast amount of lightning power. I can give it a try." Therefore, he stood in the middle of the nine heavens platform and waved his hands to cast a spell. The hidden lightning power in his body immediately rushed out like a river and gathered between his palms. As he shouted, 2 lightning snakes as thick as an arm shot out from his palms and entered the nine heavens platform under his feet. Bang bang! 2 muffled sounds rang out. The 2 lightning snakes immediately exploded and turned into thousands of tiny purple lightning arcs that entered the nine heavens platform. Instantly, the jade-like floor of the nine heavens platform was dyed with a layer of brilliant purple. Tens of thousands of lightning snakes shuttled back and forth within the nine heavens platform, following a specific trajectory. Tianqing stared at the ground and saw the runes and lines appearing once again. Within a radius of 100 meters, there were at least 90,000 lines and lines that formed an ancient and mysterious formation. Although he was very unfamiliar with this array, he could not identify the type of array or its grade. However, he was certain that this 100-meter-wide array formation was only the tip of the iceberg of the entire array formation. What made him even more excited was that he vaguely felt that this formation was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. He seriously recalled for a moment, then his face suddenly changed, and a trace of joy flashed in his eyes. "I remember now. It was the divine array in Kenshin's tomb." The array formation on the nine heavens platform was very similar to the divine array formation in the nine heavens platform. It seems like this array formation is also a true divine array formation. This discovery made Tianqing excited, as if he had seen the hope of deciphering the array formation. However, after he calmed down, he thought of a problem and frowned in disappointment. The array formation on the nine heavens platform is also a divine array. I only saw a radius of 100 meters just now. The complete array formation is probably 10 miles wide, occupying the entire nine heavens platform. Moreover, with my current strength and knowledge of array formations, it is impossible for me to decipher the divine array formation. It seems like I have to wait until I reach the primordial soul stage before I can decipher this array formation and open the passage to the other continents. When he thought of this, the excitement and anticipation in his heart dissipated. However, the low voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind again. "Tianqing, what you need to do is to activate the array formation. Why do you need to decipher it?" Tianqing was stunned. He asked in disbelief, "As long as I activate the array formation, I can open the passage?" "Of course," the burial of heaven said with certainty, That array formation is just a teleportation array, not a defensive or trapping array. Why do I need to decipher it? Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. This is much easier. Just now, I only used a little lightning power to make the array formation appear in a radius of 100 meters. If I use all my strength, there is a high chance that I can activate the entire array formation. At this point, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind. He asked the Burial of Heaven, "Oh right, Burial of Heaven, even if I release all the lightning in my body, it will not be comparable to the 9 heavens divine thunder. If the 9 heavens divine thunder blasts down and injects endless lightning into the 9 heavens platform, won't the teleportation array formation be completely activated?" The Burial of Heaven said indifferently, "If you trigger the 9 heavens divine thunder, even if the array formation is activated, it will only last for 2 breaths of time. At that time, you will be burnt to a crisp. How will you enter the array formation?" Ji Tianqing was relieved. He nodded and said, "All right, if this method is not feasible, I will try again." Then, he used all the lightning power in his body again. It turned into 2 pillars of lightning and shot out from his palms into the 9 heavens platform. Bang! Bang! Along with 2 muffled sounds, 2 thick purple lightning bolts bombarded the 9 heavens platform. They turned into millions of purple lightning arcs and drilled into the 9 heavens platform. Soon, the ground within a radius of 100 meters turned a dazzling purple. The dense lightning arcs shuttled back and forth in the 9 heavens platform, forming tens of thousands of lines and patterns. Ji Tianqing continued to cast spells and inject lightning power into the 9 heavens platform, causing the purple area on the ground to expand continuously. In just 10 breaths of time, he had released all the lightning power in his body. A quarter of the 9 heavens platform within a radius of 10 miles had turned a dazzling purple. In other words, a quarter of the array formation had been activated. However, this was far from enough. Ji Tianqing activated his divine soul magic sword and released even more lightning power into the 9 heavens platform. Soon, half of the 9 heavens platform had turned a dazzling purple. Tens of thousands of lines and patterns appeared on the ground. Ji Tianqing's energy was rapidly depleting. His face was pale, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. However, he still gritted his teeth and persevered. He opened the divine eye of lightning on his forehead and released a pillar of lightning into the 9 heavens platform. The dazzling purple area was still expanding and spreading in all directions. A majestic ancient divine array had already appeared on the platform and was about to appear. After 20 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing's energy was about to be exhausted. He was so tired that he felt dizzy and was about to collapse. However, only 70% of the 9 heavens platform had turned a dazzling purple. His lightning power was still not strong enough to activate the array formation. Damn it! I am still lacking by a little bit. Am I unable to succeed and can only fail? This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, and he was filled with unwillingness. At this moment, the sword of the Burial of Heaven also moved. It pointed its sword at the ground, and a violent pillar of lightning shot out from its blade into the 9 heavens platform. With the help of the sword of the Burial of Heaven, dazzling purple lightning spread rapidly and gradually covered the entire 9 heavens platform. Ji Tianqing was pleasantly surprised, and he was immediately energized. In just a few breaths of time, dazzling purple lightning arcs finally covered the entire 9 heavens platform. The 10 miles divine stone, which was sparkling and translucent just a moment ago, had completely turned a dazzling purple. At this moment, the ancient and mysterious array was finally activated. Swoosh. Chapter 13:10. When the 30-meter tall and 10-meter wide door appeared, Ji Tianqing was incomparably excited. The tall and majestic divine thunderbolt door was a dazzling purple. Purple lightning curled around the door frame and lintel, as if dragons and snakes were slithering about. Inside the door was a purple whirlpool that led to an unknown place, making it seem extremely mysterious. Tianxing, you only have 2 breaths of time. Don't hesitate and quickly go in. The Burial of Heaven's voice rang out in Ji Tianxing's mind, sounding somewhat urgent. Ji Tianxing was already exhausted, and his entire body was sore and weak. Even taking a single step was difficult for him. When he heard the Burial of Heaven's urging, he still hesitated for a moment. After all, he still had worries in his heart. If I pass through this divine thunderbolt door and really reach Shenwu continent, how will I return? He still had friends and family on the Tianxian continent, and there were still many things that he had not finished. The demon emperor was not dead, and the demon army was still attacking the 3 races, causing chaos in the world. The ancestral demon god was about to awaken and be reborn, and when that time came, he would definitely sweep across the world and plunge the world into misery and suffering. If he left the Tianxian continent and stepped onto another continent, he would be safe and could even start a new journey on the martial path. But what about his friends and family? Who would resolve the crisis of the human race? Who would be able to resist the impending calamity? At this moment, many thoughts flashed through Ji Tianxing's mind. He was not a saint, and he definitely would not take on the responsibility of saving the world. However, there were too many people and things that he could not let go of. How could he so easily cut off his emotions and desires and become carefree? At this moment, the Burial of Heaven's voice rang out once more. Tianxing, don't hesitate anymore. Trust me. Ji Tianxing also knew that this was a rare opportunity, and he would regret it if he missed it. Thus, he hurriedly erupted with the last of his strength and desperately rushed towards the divine thunderbolt door that was 100 steps away. In just 2 breaths of time, he had crossed the distance of 100 steps like a gust of wind and rushed into the door with all his might. Whoosh! His figure was submerged in purple lightning, and he instantly disappeared without a trace. Almost at the same time as he charged into the divine thunderbolt gate, the 2 breaths of time ended. The entire divine thunderbolt array naturally dissipated, and the divine gate also disappeared into thin air. The 9 heavens platform regained its calm, and the dazzling purple lightning that covered the ground also disappeared without a trace. It was as if nothing had happened. Dozens of miles away from the 9 heavens platform, Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes still hadn't left. He was still sitting in the air above the sea. Just now, when Ji Tianxing had used the power of thunder and activated the divine thunderbolt formation, he had seen everything clearly. He had personally witnessed Ji Tianxing's strength increase explosively. He had even released boundless lightning and opened a divine gate of lightning. He didn't quite understand what Ji Tianxing was doing. However, he was filled with shock and disbelief. He opened his mouth silently and did not come back to his senses for a long time. It wasn't until a long time later that a cold sea breeze blew over that he shivered and woke up from his shock. No. Ji Tianxing had a problem. He used the divine thunderbolt to temper his body. Not only did he become extremely powerful, he could also control the power of thunder. Just now, he seemed to have used the power of thunder to open some kind of array and condense a gate of light. Then, he passed through the divine thunderbolt gate and disappeared along with the lightning. It's really strange. What is that kid trying to do? Where did he go after passing through that gate? Could it be that he escaped from under my nose just like that? Old Ancestor 3 Absolutes frowned and muttered to himself angrily. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought. His heart was filled with hatred and killing intent, as well as deep shock and doubt. However, he still remained calm and focused on thinking. He analyzed all kinds of clues and wanted to find the truth. Legend has it that the 9 heavens platform not only has great danger and terror, but also great opportunities and fortuitous encounters that can allow one to reach the heavens in a single step. Ji Tianxing had to endure the divine thunderbolt's attack, which was extremely dangerous and terrifying. However, after passing through the divine thunderbolt gate, he mysteriously disappeared. Could it be that he obtained a great opportunity? When he thought of this, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes was burning with jealousy and was about to go crazy. It would be fine if he didn't know about this, but it happened right under his nose. He watched with his own eyes but was powerless to stop it. How could he not be angry to the point of vomiting blood? After hesitating for a while, he finally made up his mind. No. With my strength and methods, I can't stop Ji Tianxing, let alone unravel the secret of the Nine Heavens platform. Now that he and that divine sword have disappeared, I can't get it anymore. Since I can't get it, then I must destroy him and that divine sword. At this point, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes revealed a cold smile, and his eyes became ferocious and bloodthirsty. I'm going to inform that person. As an Essence Soul Realm expert, he will definitely be interested in the Divine Sword and the Nine Heavens platform. With that, he took out a communication jade slip from his interspatial ring. After inputting a message into the jade slip, he released it. Whoosh! The communication jade simplified into a spiritual light and flew high into the sky, disappearing. After sending the message, old Ancestor 3 Absolutes waited with a cold smile on his face, watching the Nine Heavens platform closely. At the same time, Ji Tianxing saw a blur in front of his eyes, and he arrived in a foreign space. That's right, it was a space, not a continent or a world. The scene that he saw was completely different from what he had imagined. Beneath his feet and all around him was darkness. There was nothing there, just a pitch-black and cold void. There was neither air nor spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the void. There were no living creatures in the void. The extremely cold temperature could freeze a soul-level Dharma treasure into powder and instantly freeze a soul refinement realm expert to death. Only Essence Soul Realm experts who had surpassed the soul refinement realm could survive in this void. Fortunately, although Ji Tianxing was not in the Essence Soul Realm, he was comparable to a half-step Essence Soul Realm expert. Moreover, his body and soul had been tempered by the Nine Heavens' divine thunder and were unimaginably powerful. He could move freely in the void, but he could not stay there for too long. The dermic powers in his body were being depleted at a rapid rate. According to his estimation, he could last for at most 10 days in the void before exhausting all his dermic powers. At that time, only death would await him. Understanding this, he remained calm and collected, observing the scene around him. It didn't take long for him to make out that this void was like a huge and long canyon, but it also looked like a wide crack. A crack in the void? I thought that after passing through the divine thunderbolt gate, I would reach the Shenwu continent. Ji Tianxing muttered in disappointment and quietly analyzed. The burial of heaven once said that the continents in this world were sealed by the gods and were not connected to each other. However, after tens of thousands of years, the seals between the continents have loosened and cracks have appeared. If that's the case, then this huge and narrow void is the crack in the god's seal? As this thought flashed through his mind, the burial of heaven's deep voice rang out in his mind. Your guess is correct, but it's not accurate enough.